War! World War III! Lobbing nukes! Everybody's lobbing missiles at each other. Everybody's going to die because of Iran and Israel, and, oh wait, it's over. It lasted an entire 12 days with U.S. involvement. But we are going to talk about what actually happened with this. I do have a lot of problem with the way that this was handled. I'm not going to let the Trump administration get by without any sort of criticism from me because, well, my first position is always anti-war, and I'm not real happy about the way that this went. So we'll talk about what happened from the beginning, from the end, and where we're sitting at now. So strap yourselves in for that. That's going to be the vast majority of what we sit back here and talk about today, is the situation with Israel, Iran. Russia got their fingers into it, the oil prices, the media coverage, and everything else that went along with this. But once we are done with that, we have plenty more to talk about. And Zoran Mamdani, rather. I completely butchered that last name the first time, and the first couple times I actually pronounced it out loud. Zoran Mamdani is the new frontrunner for the mayor's race in New York City. We're going to talk about his specific platform, what is going on with that, and where that goes, and possibly a little bit of the overreaction, but also possibly a little bit of the discussion about the fact that he is openly socialist and will tell you that to your face, whether you want him to or not. A gunman attempts to shoot up a church in Wayne County in Michigan, and he is stopped by a good guy with a gun. We're going to talk about that, some of the motivations and some of the speculations that came along with that. And Neera Tanden is now shown to be the person behind the auto pen for Biden. We'll talk a bit about what's been going on with that investigation, some of the testimony, and what this could mean going forward. It is going to be all of this and more over here on Contemporary. So strap yourselves in, find a friend, find a couple friends, and remember, I love to hear the live chat, but no texting and driving. And somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and dreams that you dare to dream really come true. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Whatever that rattle thing is that's in lo-fi, I want to know what it is. Not necessarily because I want to learn how to play it. It's an instrument I've never heard before. It's prevalent in the Ballad of the Goddess song that we were just listening to from Helen over on Zelda's Memories. That is on the Video Game Study Lounge, the backing music for all contemporary streams. go in and check that out. That's always an encouragement off of there. DJ Cutman does awesome music and basically brought together a bunch of other awesome people to put a nice big playlist out there for us to enjoy. Especially someone like me who grew up with a love of video games and met a lot of his favorite people over the fact that he loved video games. Good morning. Hi. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We've got a bunch to go over here today. As we said in the cold open, I do encourage your live chats here, and I read them out on air. If you can come out and put them out. The disadvantage, of course, of doing this during the morning commute times is, well, I'm better than the AM radio. Excuse me. And I'm not ashamed to admit the fact that I'm better than the AM radio because you can sit down and watch Contemporary and not have 10 minutes of content followed by 15 minutes of commercial. But the disadvantage, of course, is the fact that I love to read your live chats, but I don't want you to do it while you're driving. Especially if you've got your kids in your car, if you're taking them to daycare. I know we're past the take them to school time, but if you're taking them to daycare or whatnot, stay safe, stay on the road, eyes on the road at all times. With that being said, hi, good morning. Has anybody checked on Ben Shapiro lately? Are you sure? Well, make sure that he's still alive, that he's not just, I don't know. I don't want to say certain things on YouTube just because of the fact that they'll get me demonetized, banned. Well, I'm not monetized on YouTube anyway, but banned because, talking about self-delete is a verboten topic on YouTube. But I think somebody needs to go back in and check and make sure that old Benny Boy didn't do that, because his lifelong dream of seeing Persia wiped off the map in the glory of Israel, it seems, and of course this is a tenuous situation that's only about 27 hours old at this point. It could go the other way, but it seems for right now, if the events of today play out the way that they're being presented to us, that the war with Iran and Israel that got U.S. involvement is over at this point. 12 days later. 12 whole days of libertarians speculating that Trump is just another Bush. 12 days of neocons salivating in their pants. 12 days of panic mongers and Democrats, but I repeat myself, telling us that this is World War III and everybody who is MAGA needs to be the first one on the line to get drafted because, of course, every time there's a conflict that one side or the other doesn't like, we start talking about the draft. So, yeah, it's been an interesting few days. It's been an interesting week since we talked last, but anyway, we've got a lot to go over here today, so we're going to get started. I'm going to get the live chat up here so you guys can see that. I've got the Rumble on a separate live chat than everything else, so go and check that out. By the way, I'm pretty sure I just found Midget B's second YouTube account. If you're in the Discord, this is kind of a if you know, you know. You'll get to see me rib him later on after the show. Don't worry, I screenshotted it and saved it, so in case my X refreshes, then it's still going to wind up showing up in the Discord, so don't worry about that. But and join the Discord, by the way, if you're not. It's linked in the descriptions below. We have debates and talks about what goes on with everything else. And for the most part, I go free speech. I do try to comport to Discord rules, but hey, in the Not Safe for Work channels, it's a free-for-all. Anyway, we're going to get started here today, so strap yourselves in. Looks like Quest Fanning is here. What's up, Petros? DM Ryan is over here. Welcome. Got some lurkers over on the Rumble side. Love you lurkers too. I always love my lurkers. And let's get started. New scene. I have to get all the rest of my scenes poked onto my Stream Deck. I got the Stream Deck. It's here. I've got some ideas on what I want to put on it. Haven't had time to sit down and fiddle with it and actually get it on there. I've seen and watched videos and listened to videos. Teaching myself how to do it. Haven't got to have any hands-on experience. That is behind the scenes stuff. Let's do some in front of the scenes stuff. I did set that up on a button though. Transition out. We're going to start this morning with the Dow. Let's get started with that. Let's get the other live chat up here. The Dow. Well, yesterday it kind of took a... It did stay down below the previous close levels. We'll see what's happening with that as we check in with what the articles say with that. But it's kind of a tenuous situation when we don't know if we're going to be buying stock in Raytheon and Northrop Grumman to try to keep our portfolios up, or ExxonMobil to try to keep our portfolios up, or American manufacturing to try to keep our portfolios up. There's a bunch of different ways that we can go back and do all this over here. But, yep, it started 43, just a little bit over 43.1. It wound up at 42.982. So, let's have a look at what happened with that. Let's, what's recent? What's new? We're not going to do Wall Street Journal because, well, they make you pay. Let's check in with our news. I probably can't get IBD because they're being buttheads. We'll open it up just to see. I'll grab CNBC News over here too because I know that's going to be the backup. Oh, hey, no, they left it not behind the paywall. Hey, let's read IBD today for the first time in, like, whatever. Stock market today. Dow rises after surprise GDP jobless claims. Nvidia keeps climbing. This is live coverage from Scott Latonin. Futures for the Dow Industrial and other major indices traded higher in pre-market action Thursday as Wall Street digested early release of first quarter GDP numbers and weekly jobless claims. Meanwhile, Nvidia continued to rally on the stock market today after hitting new highs. Thank you, Mr. Fanning, for sharing to X/Twitter. They are two different things, but they're still fun. Kind of curious if... Yes, he got my World War III one. I love that. So, just a reminder over on X, well, I did it on Discord too, but a reminder, because I love Fallout. Everybody knows that I love Fallout. So my X post was, holy crap, everyone, it's going to be World War III. Nukes everywhere. This is what we prepared for with all that time in Fallout. Wait, it's already over? Huh, okay. Contemporary. All right, back to what we're doing. Thank you for the share out, by the way, to his, what are we at, 17,000 followers, Mr. Fanning? Ahead of the opening bell, the Dow rose 0.2% while the S&P futures gained 0.2%. The Nasdaq moved up to 0.3% in early trading. The 10-year yield ticked lower to 4.27% Thursday. Meanwhile, oil prices moved up with West Texas Intermediate futures selling around $65.25 a barrel, which is why you're seeing some of your gas prices presumably go down just a bit here. That was the one that I was starting to watch. I'm like, crap, we're already back up to 309, and then now driving through the main town that's close to me, I see 298, 297, 289 in some places. It's a little bit all over the place, but there are two distinct regions of the town next to me. It's a fairly good-sized town that it's usually about 7 to 10 cents difference across town. Among the ETFs, the Invesco QQQ Trust rose 0.4%, while the SPDR S&P 500 ETF added 0.3% ahead of the market open. New IBD leaderboard stock, Nvidia rallied another 1.6%. Thursday pre-market set to add to Wednesday's breakout gains past 153.13 by point and a cup base. On the market today, got a couple different articles on the market today, or a couple different sections on the market today. All right, GDP weak, but jobless claims beat estimate. The Commerce Department said the GDP declined 0.5% in the first quarter, below estimates for a 0.2% contraction. So we are moving towards a recession right now. We will see if this carries over into quarter two, which we will start to be getting numbers in the next few months. So, I mean, we've only got, what is today, the 26th? We've got 4 days left in quarter two. So we're going to start having the speculation on that, and yes, we might be in a recession right now. We'll see what happens with that. Meanwhile, the Labor Department's weekly jobs claims fell to 236,000. They were expected to hold steady at 245, according to Conroe Day estimates. So more people are going to work, but the GDP did drop in the first quarter. 13.5 thousand for Mr. Fanning. Another one on the markets. Stock market today, GDP jobless claims due at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so about a half an hour ago. The Commerce Department's first quarter GDP is expected to contract 0.2% versus the previous quarter. Meanwhile, the Labor Department's weekly jobs claims are expected to hold steady at 245. We've already seen that gone, so this must be an old section. Yeah, they're doing live trend, that's why. All right, so that's what we have on our markets for the morning. A little bit of a mixed bag, so we'll see what happens and where we go with that. Looks like things are looking up right now, but hey, as they always say, futures trading does not represent actual trading once the markets are open. Powell says Fed rate cut is on hold even as Trump demands cuts. Just a little bit more on the financial side, on the financial sector, before we get into the really fun stuff. And that's a debate that we had last week too. And I said last week, I could see both sides of where we're coming from here, because yes, I can see Powell using this as a political axe, as a political club, because holding the rates high are going to make it harder and harder for the Trump policies to come back out and start making a difference in the economy and the jobs and people's wages and etc. But on the other side of it, and I was just talking to Palm about this too, it's going to be a delicate balancing act, because while yes, I do believe that large deportations of illegal immigrants is going to open up a lot of openings in the housing market, because that's basic economic supply and demand, and there are a lot of illegal immigrants in this country as a ratio to the actual population of U.S. citizens, legal immigrants, etc. in this country. So there's a lot that can happen with that. And once they start going, we're going to start seeing some housing prices crash. But if we drop the interest rate too low, it's going to start a bidding war over every single house, and a modest house like mine that got sold for $2 something is going to be in the $3-4 half million range, with people bidding over it left and right. So that's what we have for that. Let's look at the Associated Press for this from Chris Rugaber. The Federal Reserve will continue to wait and see how the economy evolves before deciding whether to reduce its key interest rate. Jerome Powell said Tuesday it stands directly at odds with President Trump's calls for immediate cuts. For the time being, we're well positioned to wait to learn more about the likely course of the economy before considering any adjustments to our policy stance, Powell said in testimony Tuesday before the House Financial Services Committee. Several Republicans on the committee pushed Powell to consider reducing borrowing costs more quickly as soon as its next meeting at the end of July, but on the whole, the hearing was not uniformly polite, and Powell did not face sharp criticism over the Fed's decision to leave its rate unchanged. Yeah, it's a little bit interesting, because you a lot of times have a lot of uniformly impolite conversation when you're hovering on the whole. Members of both parties thank Powell for maintaining his focus on the Fed's dual mission of controlling inflation and supporting maximum employment. Powell has often cited his support of Congress as a bulwark against Trump's attack. Trump lashed out again early Tuesday, posting on his social media site, Truth Social by the way, I hope Congress works this very dumb, hard-headed person over. We'll be paying for his incompetence for many years to come. Well, yeah, you said, Quest Fanning says house prices going down or going up. Which is it? You throw the illegals out, you're going to start to see the prices go down because of supply and demand, but you throw that interest rate up and have 17 people bidding over the exact same house, then they're going to go up. It's a weird position to be in right now, housing market-wise, definitely. Because we're at a tipping point where literally anything can happen, and it's going to be disastrous both ways. I don't have a crystal ball. There's no Santeria being practiced here. All right, from the Daily Wire, Federal Reserve Vice Chair open to cutting interest rates at next meeting. So a little bit of back and forth inside of the Federal Reserve. From Reuters, Federal Reserve Vice Chair for Supervision Michelle Bowman, recently tapped by Trump as the central bank's top overseer, said Monday the time to cut interest rates may be fast approaching, as she is growing more worried about the risks of the job market and is less concerned tariffs will cause inflation problems. It's time to consider adjusting the policy rate, Bowman said at the text of remarks being delivered before a gathering held in Prague. Bowman said the inflation appears to be on a sustained path back to 2%, and she expects only minimal impact on inflation from trade policy. Should inflation pressures remain contained, I would support lowering the policy rate as soon as our next meeting in order to bring it closer to its neutral setting and sustain a healthy labor market, Bowman said. Last week, the Federal Reserve meeting, and it gathered that left its overnight target rate range fixed between 4.25% and 4.5%. Officials remained in a wait-and-see mode amid the considerable economic uncertainty created by President Trump's erratic implemented trade policy. Fed officials are worried that surging import taxes could depress growth while restarting what could have been a cooling inflation pressure. So, one says go one way, the other one says go the other way. And now, for the crux, the meat of what we are here for. Full disclosure before we get into this. My position politically, before anything else, before I say Republican, before I say Democrat, before I say Libertarian, before I say hands out of the markets, before I say free market, before I say control the market, before I say weigh in on any of these situations, anywhere whatsoever, anywhere, my first position is always anti-war. It's always been anti-war. It's part of the reason I was so adamantly against Bush and I thought I was a Democrat for as long as I did. My first position will always be anti-war. I don't give a damn what MAGA deluded himself to believe that we are not sufficiently Trump worshipping enough. If we don't come back out and advocate for the destruction of Iran off the map, and there have been some wild takes in every direction, mostly shifting with the sentiment of whatever is actually happening in the news right now. Now, I'm sure that a lot of these same people who are saying that we need to go and wipe Iran off the map are now saying because Trump said it's a ceasefire, then we need to let them live in peace and hope that the ceasefire holds. And the anti-Israel crowd is, I don't know if they're actually becoming louder, becoming more bold, or if they're just getting pushed to the top because a lot of people want to engage with them right now and tell them that they are morons. But they are in rare form at this point. It's been a mess for the last few days, definitely. I don't know where this goes, but let's start with the USA Today. Deadly Israel-Iran conflict is now over. Trump declares that NATO, this is a live updater, so we're only going to read briefly into this one, but trust me, from if you're watching on the video platform and not driving, from here all the way down to here. So over half of the stack right now is just Iran stuff. And then we go talk about other foreign policy because we've got a ceasefire in the Congo and Rwanda. Alright, let's read from here. Trump admin believes the deadly 12-day conflict between Israel and Iran is over and will not restart, Trump said on Wednesday. Look, we think it's over. I don't think we're going back at each other. Trump said at a news conference closing out a NATO summit in the Netherlands, adding that his team will speak with Iranian leaders next week. Trump went on as far as comparing the American attack on Iranian nuclear facilities over the weekend to the U.S. dropping 2 atomic bombs on Japan in 1945 at the conclusion of World War II. I don't know that I would go that direction if it was me. I think that's a bit of a stretch too far myself. When you look at Hiroshima and you look at Nagasaki, that ended a war too. This ended a war in a different way. Trump spent his final day at NATO disputing leaked intelligence that assessed U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear programs, set them back by months, not years, as he and other members of his admin have been claiming the intelligence report found some of the Iranian nuclear program's core components, such as its centrifuges and enriched uranium, remain intact, sources told the USA Today. We don't know what sources, but, sources. The Trump admin maintains there's 3 key uranium enrichment sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, which, by the way, I spent the entire episode last week saying a Ford Row. I don't know why, there's not a second R in there. Were totally destroyed by U.S. airstrikes, which Trump said was supported by satellite imagery of the locations. Trump said the Pentagon assessment was not finished and provided an incomplete picture of the situation. They didn't see it. All they could do is take a guess, Trump said of the intelligence assessment. He later posted this on his social media. We've collected additional evidence, and we've also spoken to the people who've seen the site. That site is obliterated. It is gone. There is no more. Obliterated. Rafael Grossi, head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, said the focus on how much damage Iran's nuclear sites sustained and how long it might take to rebuild them misses the larger point that a long-term solution is required. The technological knowledge is there and the industrial capacity is there. Those are both fair points, by the way. You can go and wreck equipment all day long, and as long as there are people who know how to make it again, you're not back to square one. You're back to like square three at that point. It's the same argument that I made to Robert when we had our big gun debate when he still came around and was still in the generational gap. The exact same argument that I made. You can sit down and ban all guns. We had a Lincoln Douglas debate on gun control for a charity event that we were both working with at the time. It was one of his, and it was for St. Jude's. We did a charity event for that, and he and I had a Lincoln Douglas style gun debate with Stephen Ignoramus as the moderator for that. And the big point that I drove home was the fact that, yes, you can go out and ban, confiscate, melt down every single firearm in this country, but unless you are willing to destroy the other means of production, stuff that you're using to make pistons, engine blocks, meat packing equipment, and everything else like that, yes, we know how to go back and CNC and machine these things. The technical knowledge there is to make another 30-06. It's going to take us a few months because we don't have the equipment, but same exact argument that I made to Robert. Trump envoy, hopeful peace with Iran absent nuclear weapon. While saying the U.S. will engage in talks with Iranian leaders next week, Trump downplayed the need for any kind of deal. Because in his estimation, Iran's nuclear capabilities have been decimated. But Trump's envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, said he's hopeful in a peace accord that can be reached with this regime. He also reiterated in an interview with CNBC the administration's position that Iran, deemed by the U.S. state a sponsor of terrorism, can't be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. We can't have weaponization, Witkoff said Wednesday. That will destabilize the entire region. Everyone then will need a bomb, and we just can't have that. In fairness, everybody else around them does have a bomb. I'm just saying. I'm not 100% sold on this we have to go world police Iran thing. When they get some intercontinental ballistic capabilities, maybe I'll change my mind on that. But for right now, I don't feel the need to go back and world police them. At The Hague, Trump also suggested sanctions on Iran might be eased, though he did not commit to that and said his policy of maximum pressure on the regime remains in place. They're going to need money to put the country back in shape. We want to see that happen, Trump said, as he asked when asked at a news conference if his softening oil sanctions on Iran. So that's our live updater. We'll go into a bit more depth on a few things that happened with this week. Going into the Associated Press. We'll start at the end and go back to the beginning, I think. Ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to hold as Trump vents frustration with both sides. Yeah, because they both lobbed missiles at each other right after they got the ceasefire signed, before the ink was dry. I don't know who shot first either. Hint, neither do you, but you believe whichever side fired first, basically on partisan lines. By John Gambrell, David Rising, Melanie Lindman, and Sam Mednick. A fragile ceasefire between Iran and Israel appeared to hold Tuesday after initially faltering, and U.S. President Trump expressed frustration with both sides, saying they had fought for so long and so hard, and they don't know what they're doing. But even as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claimed Israel had brought Iran's nuclear program to ruin. A new U.S. intelligence report found that the program has been set back by only a few months after U.S. strikes over the weekend, according to two people familiar with the assessment. The earlier report issued Monday by the Defense Intelligence Agency was described to the Associated Press by two people familiar with it. They were not authorized to address the matter publicly and spoke on condition of anonymity. A reminder of that. When they say two people who were not authorized to address the matter publicly and spoke on condition of anonymity, there is an equal chance that this is some deep-seated agent who has been with the agency for 40 years, been through 10 administrations, has known everybody, and knows everything about what's going on in the world. There's an equal chance that it's that dude as there is that it's the night janitor who will just come back out and say whatever it is that the Associated Press wants to hear. It's one of the reasons that I absolutely hate anonymous sources on something like that. Because, I mean, let's be frank. The night janitor is not going to be authorized to talk about the matter publicly either. Because he's not going to have an idea what's going on. The report also contradicts statements from Trump, who said the Iranian nuclear program was completely and fully obliterated. The White House called the assessment flat out wrong. Wrong. It's wrong. After the truce was supposed to take effect, Israel accused Iran of launching missiles into the airspace, and the Israeli finance minister vowed that Tehran will tremble. Excuse me. Instagram heard that, but YouTube did not. For those of you in the audio platform, a little bit of allergy tickle in the throat. Needed to sit back and hack a lung out. The Iranian military denied firing on Israel, state media reported, but explosions boomed, and sirens sounded across northern Israel in the morning, and Israeli military officials said 2 Iranian missiles were intercepted. Do we know that they were Iranian missiles? And I'm not trying to play Israel first on this one, or Israel last. I'm not trying to play the I'm Candace Owen and Tucker Carlson kind of thing off this, because frankly, don't give a damn. But I'd be curious. I remember when the missile got launched, it was supposedly Russian, and it hit so close to the Ukrainian border with Poland that some of the debris got into Poland. And then we all found out that it was actually a Ukrainian missile. Do you think Israel would go to a point to shoot missiles at itself because the Iron Dome will still intercept them. But to shoot missiles at itself to come back and say, Iran did it! Get them! Kill them! Oh hey, I can go launch another volley of missiles and I'll be totally accepted by it. But it is appearing to hold at this point. We've got Aaron Burnett reporting from near the Strait of Hormuz about the Israel-Iran ceasefire. We'll be talking about the Strait of Hormuz separately, but this popped up while I was looking for Strait of Hormuz. So let's listen to Aaron Burnett.
Will the ceasefire hold? The sun is rising here in the Middle East, and that is the crucial question right now. I'm standing by the Strait of Hormuz, and just yesterday, hours ago really, the Iranian parliament had authorized closing the Strait of Hormuz. It would have been an unprecedented moment, possibly the beginning of a much bigger and more perilous war. And then, even as they had authorized that closing, there were talks of a ceasefire mediated by Qatar. Now, I've just talked to sources in the Gulf, senior government officials, and they are saying they think this ceasefire might hold. They say never underestimate Iran, but they say in this case, the cavalry ain't coming. So they seem optimistic about the ceasefire. In Iran, though, a source there indicating it's much more chaotic and uncertain. They say that they were talking about a ceasefire with Qatar. President Trump posted that there was a ceasefire said and done, even though they hadn't agreed to it yet. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. But the real question comes down to, where is the supreme leader? Where is the supreme leader? We haven't heard from him. We've heard from the foreign ministry in Iran, but not from the supreme leader. We've been talking about how he's in a bunker deep in Tehran. The question is, what does he have to say? What does he know? What is he communicating? And how in control is he?
Yes. It's one thing they have been talking about on the news, and I neglected to get that on there. Maybe we'll look up a little bit of that, but apparently the Ayatollah is missing. Nobody can find him. Dissidents, maybe? I don't think so. I think the IRGC would decimate most dissidents at this point from getting to the leader, but maybe. All right. There have been memes coming out about this one here. I like this one. Whale psychiatrist. Breaking: a federal judge has ordered President Trump to rebuild Iran's nuclear sites. Because the federal judiciary has to undo everything that the Orange Man is doing right now. I like that one. That was funny. I like that one. Foothills guy. That has to be a joke. I check my sources before I spread that around. Think about it. And whale psychiatrist coming back here. My sources are, it's an obvious joke, bud. That was funny. I like that. Somebody else was complaining. Someone literally copied and pasted your post. I despise some of these folks. I can tell by the time punches. Well, he copied and pasted that post. He didn't copy and paste it, but he reused a federal judge has ordered this thing that was good otherwise. Because it's undoing something the Orange Man did. That joke is as old as this administration is at this point. Which is not very old, but it's been going on since basically the Orange Man took his hand off the big golden Bible. Alright, from CNN again. Israel agreed to a ceasefire with Iran. Could Gaza be next? That'd be an interesting situation. Is there going to be pressure to relieve the pressure on the Palestinian citizens? And what would that do, by the way, to the anti-Israel Gaza crowd? Where would they go? Because a lot of these people that are complaining about the genocide and all the other things that they think is actually going on over in Israel with Gaza are so staunchly against the Orange Man that if he came out and said that air is good, that they would stop breathing. I do wonder what would happen with them and where that would go. This is from Kara Fox, not Katie Fox. After 12 days of intense strikes between Israel and Iran, punctuated by the United States bombing of Iranian nuclear sites over the weekend and Tehran's performative retaliation, a U.S. brokered ceasefire is holding. Get the live chat back up here. Oops, that's not the one that I wanted. That's what I'm going to rib Midget B with later. But in Gaza, Israel's offensive has shown no signs of abating, with Israeli fire killing hundreds of people there since the Iran-Israel conflict began. As Iran dominates its headlines, the Palestinians and hostage families caught up in the region's longest war have slipped from the front pages. Is that really the region's longest war? I feel like we were in Afghanistan for 2 decades. I would fact check that. Not to mention, the region has been pretty much at war since Abraham was walking around. Consistently. Largely forgotten amid the devastating blows between the two of the Middle East's most powerful countries. Since Israel's bombardment of Iran began on June 13th, more than 860 people in Gaza have been killed by Israeli fire, according to CNN's calculations of daily death tolls released by the Palestinian Health Ministry. I think Rome occupied Israel for, well, I know Rome occupied Israel for longer than the Gaza-Israeli war has been going on. Where are we getting region's longest war from? Since Israel's bombardment of Iran began on June 13th, more than 860 people in Gaza have been killed by Israeli fire, per CNN's calculations of the daily death tolls released by the Palestinian Health Ministry. On Tuesday, 7 Israeli soldiers were killed by a bomb attached to their armored carrier in Khan Yunis as clashes continue in southern Gaza. But there are hints that the rapid end to the fighting between Israel and Iran could spur on a breakthrough for stalled talks on Gaza. Trump has said he thought American strikes on Iran's nuclear sites could help lead to a breakthrough in Israel's war against the Hamas in Gaza, and that he was very close to striking a deal in that conflict. Again, if we got a ceasefire from that, what would our left-wing friends do? That is an honest question to anybody who has a speculation on that. Still, again, don't text and drive. But what do you think that that our little friends would do? Do you think they would just take it in stride? Do you think that they would start to praise the Orange Man? Or again, would they suddenly be far and against the Palestinians at that point because Orange Man bad? I don't know where that would go. Excuse me. I think great progress. That's really irritating doing the Trump voice to the allergies. I think great progress is being made on Gaza because of the attack we made. I think we're going to have some very good news, he told reporters at the NATO summit on Wednesday. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum has called for the ceasefire between Israel and Iran to be expanded to include Gaza. That's impossible, by the way, Hostages and Missing Families Forum. No, I agree, and my first position, again, is anti-war. That's not changing because of the combatants here. But when I say that it's impossible, what I mean by that, when I'm looking at that, is the fact that the Gazan government, which is basically Hamas at this point, is a completely separate entity from Iran. Now, yes, Iran does fund the Gazan government, Hamas, and their strikes against Israel, but they are a separate entity. Iran cannot speak for Hamas in the ceasefire. So no, you can't expand that to them. Now, Iran can come in and put the elbow in and say, come on, Jack. Can I get away with the one swear word? I know I try to not do it with people who are commuting with kids in the car. Okay, I'm going to do it. Come on, jackass. Come on, it's time. It's time to stop throwing the missiles back because, with Trump in office, Israel wants to go back and stop them too. This is not Trump voice. This is Hostages and Missing Families Forum. So this is their official representative, whoever that is. Those who can achieve a ceasefire with Iran can also end the war in Gaza, said the group. Okay, there is a quote there, which advocates for the return of hostages held by Hamas. 50 hostages remain in captivity in the enclave, 20 of whom are believed to still be alive, according to the Israeli government. To conclude, this decisive operation against Iran without leveraging our success to bring home all the hostages would be a grave failure, the forum said, adding that there was now a critical window of opportunity. Oh, all the Trump voice today is going to play hell on the irritation from the allergies. I'm telling you right off the bat. To conclude this decisive operation against Iran, we read that one already, Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid echoed these sentiments, writing in a post on X. And now Gaza, this is the moment to close that front as well. To bring the hostages home and end the war, Israel needs to start rebuilding. Which, yes, I would like to see that. I would. For a variety of reasons, I would like to see that. So, the possible break of the ceasefire that I alluded to earlier from the Associated Press again. Iranian missile barrage strikes Israel after deadline Trump announced for ceasefire passes. This is from David Rising, John Gambrill, and Melanie Lindman. U.S. President Trump announced that Israel and Iran have agreed to a complete and total ceasefire soon after Iran launched a limited missile attack on Monday on a U.S. military base in Qatar. Is it Qatar or Qatar? By the way, I've heard it pronounced both ways. Retaliating for the American bombings of its nuclear sites, but the status of a possible ceasefire remained tentative after an Iranian missile barrage struck Israel for after the first deadline for a proposal. The Iranian barrages sent Israelis hurrying into bomb shelters as the sun rose, killing at least 4 people and injuring 8 others. Israel's Megan David Adam Rescue Services said Israel has yet to acknowledge Trump's proposal, which gave Israel more time to potentially strike back. Though Iran on its state television announced that an overall ceasefire had begun at 7:30 a.m. local time. I am curious as to, again, how that happened, what happened with that. And I'm not saying that Israel would fire on its own citizens to continue a war going to eliminate Persia. But I do have questions. At Beersheba, first responders said they retrieved 4 bodies from one building and were searching for more. The streets around the impact site were littered with glass and debris. Windows were blown out of buildings, and anxious neighbors stood outside their damaged houses. 3 people were rescued from nearby buildings. The direct hit in the largest city in southern Israel came just days after the city's hospital sustained significant damage on a missile strike. So, it looks like, as presented, Iran struck first. Alright. A little bit on what I was saying earlier about the fact that this region has been at war since Abraham was walking around. Marjorie Taylor Greene's official congressional page. Inject this straight into my veins, President Trump on Israel and Iran. We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long, so hard, they don't know what the F they're doing. Which, yes, this was another big controversy that was a controversy, is the fact that President Trump said the F word on live TV. If you have kids in the car, this is a direct video of President Trump. So, you have been warned. They're not hearing that F word from old Uncle J. Edgar. They're hearing it from the Orange Man himself. But let's listen.
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too. Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Was that a first? Is that a first in history? The first person to drop the F-bomb on live TV? I know it's his first president, I should say, because I know that Dale Earnhardt Jr. got a big fine for doing that back in the early aughts. Like 04, I think it was when he did that. And the better question is there going to be a fine that goes along with that? Because of the FCC. And yes, I mean, he's absolutely right, of course. Now, again, per my agreement with you, the viewer, I'm going to do this without the F word, but yeah, we've got two countries that have been at each other's throats since Abraham was walking around. And no, I don't think they've been at it since Abraham was walking around, but definitely in the First Temple era. I mean, Persia is mentioned by name, and that is the previous name of Iran in the book of Revelation and numerous other books of the Old and New Testament. So, we have Red Button Gate, the latest scandal that could lead to the impeachment of President Trump. Benny Johnson with the X on this one. Everyone stop what you're doing and listen to this, which we will listen to in a moment after we read the caption. I'm howling! If I keep saying howling, so will my dog, by the way. J.D. Vance. The president looks over at me, puts the foreign leader on mute, and says, "This is not going very well," and he presses the red button. My eyes get really big, and I'm like, "Mr. President, you know what just happened?" And he looks at me and goes, "Nuclear, nuclear." And then 2 minutes later, a guy walks in with a Diet Coke, and he looks back at me and says, "It wasn't nuclear, it's just the Diet Coke button." Let's listen. Vice President J.D. Vance.
And the president looks over at me, puts the foreign leader on mute, and says, "This is not going very well," and he presses the red button. And my eyes get really big, and I'm like, "Mr. President, you know what just happened?" And he looks at me and he goes, "Nuclear, nuclear."
Nuclear.
And 2 minutes later, a guy walks in with a Diet Coke, and he looks back at me and he says, "It wasn't nuclear, it's just the Diet Coke button." And that's... So that's the kind of guy, and my fellow Republicans, that we have as the President of the United States. And the president looks over at me, puts the foreign leader on mute, and says,
"It wasn't nuclear, it's just the Diet Coke button." I think that's funny. I still remember the first term where people are so freaking out, like, "He's so demented. He's got the red Diet Coke button on his desk. He's gonna hit that thing. He's gonna Diet Coke. Is gonna be the nuclear button. He's gonna start World War III." But of course, MSNBC has already run 10 articles saying that the red button gate means that he should be impeached, removed from office, tried, and hanged for dereliction of duty, for daring to make a joke about the red button. What else do we have? All right, we've got some of the news coverage of this and some of the narrative about this. Of course, with the big disagreement on whether or not this actually did anything. From NPC News, CIA says Iran's nuclear program severely damaged by U.S. strikes. From Dan DeLuce and Gordon LeBold, CIA Director John Radcliffe said Wednesday credible intelligence indicated Iran's nuclear program was severely damaged in recent U.S. airstrikes and that key sites were destroyed. A Defense Intelligence Agency initial assessment leaked Tuesday found that the U.S. bombing of 3 Iranian nuclear sites may have set back the country's nuclear program by only several months, a more limited impact than Trump stated after the strikes. And again, with the assessment that, like, nobody died, that does raise some concerns to me at that point about whether or not this is, like, that they've really been set back decades on this, as the president has said, because, again, as long as you know how to make the machines and then use the machines, it's really hard to get rid of the knowledge. You can get rid of the equipment all day long, and you can get rid of the equipment over and over again. It doesn't mean they're not going to make more. Just like guns. John Ratcliffe said Wednesday. CIA Director John Ratcliffe, credible intelligence indicated that Iran's nuclear program was severely damaged in recent U.S. airstrikes, that several key sites were destroyed. A defense intelligence agency initial assessment leaked Tuesday found that the U.S. bombing of 3 nuclear sites may have set the country's nuclear program back by only several months, a more limited impact than Trump stated after the strikes. The precise damage inflicted on Iran's nuclear facilities and the viability of its broader program have become politically charged issues, with Trump and his deputies denouncing the leak of the DIA report and that the news outlets reported it. Democratic lawmakers have accused the White House of possibly overstating the effect of the strikes. Well, if we're going to do this in a partisan manner, that's one of the things that I should say is maybe we should look inward first at some of the overstatements that were made during past administrations. Looking at you, Barack. Ratcliffe said on social media the CIA's findings were based on credible intelligence and that they contradicted what he called illegally sourced public reporting regarding the destruction of key Iranian nuclear facilities. Ratcliffe cited new intelligence from a historically reliable and accurate source method that several key Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed and would have to be rebuilt over the course of years. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, offered a similar assessment earlier on in the day, as anybody who's ever played StarCraft knows, though. Say you're building the spaceport, and then the AI or the person that you're competing against comes back in and launches a nuke at your spaceport. As long as the Academy is still there, you just set another SCV out and build another spaceport. In game, it takes like 3 minutes. And you're back to putting raids out there. Arms control experts and former intelligence officials say Iran could revive its nuclear program even without the 3 nuclear sites that were targeted if it managed to safeguard sufficient supply of highly enriched uranium and advanced centrifuges. And again, of course, the people that know how to make it. Rafael Grossi, the head of the UN Atomic Watchdog Agency, said Wednesday in Vienna that it was possible Iran still had a stockpile of highly enriched uranium despite a 12-day Israeli air campaign and the U.S. air raids over the weekend. Tehran may have moved the uranium soon after the first bombing raids by Israel, he said. They might have. They might not have. Pretty sure there's more uranium in the area. Well, let's just look at the resources. Uranium deposits in Iran. No, I don't want news on this one. Yeah, we'll use Wikipedia because it's good enough for term papers. Mining in Iran is still under development. The country is one of the most rich important mineral producers in the world, ranked among 15 major mineral-rich countries, including holding some 68 types of minerals, 37 billion tons of proven reserves, and more than 57 billion tons of potential reserves, worth $770 billion in 2014. In 2019, the country was the second largest producer of gypsum in the world, the 8th largest producer of molybdenum, which is used in nuclear weaponry, by the way, the world's 8th largest producer in antimony, the 11th largest producer of iron ore, the 18th largest producer of sulfur, in addition to being the 21st largest worldwide producer of salt. It was the 13th largest producer in the world of uranium in 2018. So, yeah, they've got a bunch of uranium laying around. It's not refined at this point, but they got a bunch of it. No, not that one. I don't want to do CIANN yet. Let's go back to NPC. Before Ratcliffe released his statement, Trump dismissed the DIA assessment as inconclusive and premature and said repeatedly that Iran's nuclear sites in the nuclear program have been obliterated. The DIA labeled its initial assessment as being of low confidence, according to 3 sources with knowledge of the matter. Intelligence analysts typically present their findings with varying levels of confidence depending on the quality and credibility of information available. The initial DIA assessment was based on findings Sunday night, about 24 hours after the bombing raid against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities, one of the sources said. A full battle damage assessment is still underway, the report also said, and will take days to weeks to complete, according to one of the sources. Standby Figurine Q wants me to have the best viewers on streamboo.com. Should we remove the space and click the link? I bet you. I'll bet you anything that would not lock up my computer and give me a virus and a Trojan horse. We should 100% go there and see what's happening with that. Streamboo.com. What's the worst that could happen? Right? Timeout. Take 10 minutes, think about it. I don't ban people here. I ask that my mods not ban people. I ask, of course, that the mods go back and put them in timeout just like I did. Typically, if they're bots, they just disappear on their own anyway. Realistically. Full battle damage assessment is still underway. The report also said it will take days to weeks to complete, according to one of the sources. And that's the other hard part of that, is we legitimately don't know. Fog of war is still hanging over this. We've still got to get people in there. The UN still got to get people in there. We can sit and propagandize all that we want. The anti-Trump people come back and say, oh, well, it didn't make a scratch, and they moved everything out, and they saw all your crap coming, and ba 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 ba. But additionally, the pro-Trump people come back and say, they glassed over every piece of that their nuclear facility. There's never going to be another nuclear weapon over there, and you set them back. You destroyed everything, and they're going to go back to the Stone Age and blah 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 blah. And the reality, of course, is probably somewhere in between, but we won't know until we actually go back and take a look at it. Fog of War, again, I cite my StarCraft time at this. I know what Fog of War is. Pete Hegseth told reporters at the NATO summit in the Netherlands that the DIA assessment was marked as being of low confidence because evidence of what was being bombed was buried under a mountain, devastated, and obliterated. Again, we won't know until we get in there. We can sit and speculate all day long. And it will mostly be over partisan lines, of course. CNN as well, exclusive that everybody's reporting on now. Early U.S. intel assessment suggests strikes on Iran did not destroy nuclear sites, sources say. Check on something here. Well, apparently I have some plans here. Gotta figure out what's going on with that, but let's get this back up here so we can see over the Instagram. I don't know what happens, by the way, when I dip out of Instagram to go check a message or something. Does it just kill my camera and my microphone, or? One day I'll actually have to sit back and watch the video and see, but then I have to go sit and listen to my voice for 3 hours. And you know that's cringe. And I do appreciate all the rest of you who all come back and do that as well every day. I see you. I like you. You're my people. From CNN. Natasha Bertrand, Katie Bowe-Lillis, and Zachary Cohen. The U.S. military strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities last week did not destroy the core components of the country's nuclear program, and likely only set it back by months, according to an early U.S. intelligence assessment that was described by 7 people briefed on it. No names, of course. Anonymity. The assessment, which has not been previously reported, was produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Pentagon's intelligence arm. It was based on battle damage assessment conducted by Central Command in the aftermath of the U.S. strikes. One of the sources said, the analysis of the damage to the sites and impact of the strikes on Iran's nuclear ambitions is ongoing and could change as more intelligence becomes available, but the early findings are at odds with Trump's repeated claims that the strikes completely obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment facility. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth also said on Sunday that Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. 2 of the people familiar with the assessment said Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium was not destroyed. One of the people said the centrifuges are largely intact. Another source said that the intelligence assessed enriched uranium was moved out of the sites prior to the U.S. strikes. So, they're telling you that everything is hunky-dory. Other people are telling you that it's smoke and ruin, and again, we won't know until we're in. Even then, we probably still won't know. And it's still going to come on partisan lines. Imagine that. From Axios, Trump wages all-out fight for control of Iran's strike narrative. From Barack Ravid, President Trump is going to extraordinary lengths to defend the claim that U.S. airstrikes obliterated Iran's nuclear program, determined to cement the operation as a defining victory of his presidency. Well, there's also going to be the defining victory of, hey, these people are coming to the table and talking. Trump has staked his credibility and major parts of his foreign policy legacy on the success of Saturday's military intervention, which punctuated decades of U.S. debate over the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran run-up. He has treated the leak of an initial Pentagon battle damage assessment as an act of sabotage, launching an aggressive campaign to discredit the report as preliminary, inaccurate, and already outdated. Critics have accused Trump of politicizing intelligence and pressuring officials to make an assessment that may be premature, or at least more nuanced than the president claims. Trump announced that Defense Secretary Hegseth and top Pentagon officials will hold a major news conference at 0800 on Thursday to defend the great American pilots who carried out the perfect mission. The admin has accused the media of unpatriotic behavior for reporting skeptically on the Iran strike, even while acknowledging the initial assessments from the Defense Intelligence Agency was real. The FBI has launched an investigation into the breach, and the admin plans to limit sharing classified information with the Congress to crack down on leakers, but Axios first reported. At Trump's NATO press conference in the Netherlands, he publicly reprimanded the analysts who prepared the report, claiming it wasn't finished, and he should have been withheld until they actually knew the answer. Well, right, and I get that, and I get where you're coming from with that, but the other side of that is you also should not be coming out and saying, we wrecked it, we completely destroyed it, until we know that we actually completely destroyed it. Alright, I got 3 in a row from The Wire. All video, I believe. We got one from The View, which means that at least 6 people are going to watch The View for a moment. That's not true, of course. The entire staff of the Daily Wire just sits and watches the program for whatever reason. And I know that because they come back and report it. Joyless Behar can't figure out why Trump didn't tell Iran he was going to bomb their nuclear sites. I've not pre-listened to this video clip rather. But you have my attention. We've got 2 clips for this one. I'm not even going to pre-read the article because I want to be surprised with the rest of you.
I'm happy to have you here, believe me. So on Thursday, the White House said that Trump was going to make a decision on Iran within the next 2 weeks. That's what he said. Remember that? Okay. He was going to give diplomatic negotiations more time to play out, and then, less than 48 hours later, this attack was underway. So what changed, and what was he actually trying to accomplish here?
I mean, look, the 2 weeks measure was clearly a bit of a head fake. I mean, not entirely. I wouldn't say the decision was finally made. All indications are he didn't actually make the decision to so-called pull the trigger until Saturday, you know, and then the attack commenced. But obviously, all the wheels were already in motion. In fact, the wheels were in motion a full week beforehand. Shortly after the Israelis made their attack the previous Friday, the president saw it as a sweeping success. I mean, he was very excited about it. I spoke to him that morning, and he said, this is excellent. He was no longer saying the Americans weren't involved. He was taking credit for American weaponry being part of it. He was clearly ready to go, but there was a last-minute push for some kind of a diplomatic resolution. He really wanted that moment. I mean, I think he thought he could have a Kim Jong-un moment with the supreme leader of Iran and have a big deal right before the bombs were going to drop. The Iranians were not engaging at all, and he made the decision.
Behar seriously questions why Trump didn't tell the Iranians he was going to bomb their nuclear weapons enrichment facility.
So why did he keep it a secret? For the surprise, the surprise version?
I mean, absolutely the diversion. And you saw the way that all indications were the B-2s were flying towards Guam. Everybody thought, okay, so we're getting in position to be ready. They wanted to have some element of surprise. Let's face it, there wasn't really much element of surprise. I mean, this had been in the works for a long time, but to have the final moment to be a surprise.
Why don't I just go tell you that I'm going to go bomb your country so you can get everything out of there that I want to go back and bomb? Especially, again, if your goal is to go back and target specific nuclear reaction facilities and refinement facilities to keep you from refining. If I tell you I'm going to hit them, you're going to have to come and get your crap out of there. If you actually get the nuclear target when you're playing StarCraft and you see it, because they do use a nuclear bomb in those, what do? You go get all your personnel out of there. Meanwhile, the person launching the nuke, his intent is to go back and take out all your personnel. I'm using StarCraft a lot for this, and now I want to go play. I started doing the mass recall campaign. You guys ever played that? It was a fan-made version where he took all the maps from StarCraft 1 and put them into the StarCraft 2 map editor and released them as a package. It's really good. It's a lot of fun. It's a little bit easier on some points to go back and do that. But one of the other things to keep in mind is that you have new functionality you didn't have in the first StarCraft, so it's very, very easy to screw yourselves in a very, very hard way. All right, let's have one from Bubbleheaded Bleach Blonde. Levitt debunks completely false report that Dems not given advance notice of Iran strikes. Yes, that was the other big complaint about this, is that there was no advance notice given to members of Congress on Democratic committees, which I could actually understand. And of course, Levitt is going to come back out and try to claim that this didn't happen. But even if it did, I would understand. In the partisan nature of this, it would be very easy for a Democrat member of the House Intelligence Committee to go back and get in contact with one of his contacts in Iran and say, hey, this bomb is coming. Get your crap out of there. From Daniel Chayton. White House press secretary, Bubbleheaded Bleach Blonde, set the record straight after CNN reported over the weekend that Trump admin did not provide advance notice to the U.S.'s airstrikes on 3 Iranian nuclear sites to Democratic leaders in Congress. On Fox News, Bleach Blonde said there was in fact outreach to Chuck U. Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, and the White House had the receipts to prove it. Let's listen.
We did make bipartisan calls. Thomas Massie and the Democrats, he should be a Democrat because he's more aligned with them than with the Republican Party. We're given notice. The White House made calls to congressional leadership. They were bipartisan calls. In fact, Hakeem Jeffries couldn't be reached. We tried him before the strike, and he didn't pick up the phone, but he was briefed after, as well as Chuck Schumer was briefed prior to the strike. So this notion that CNN ran with at the White House did not give a heads up to Democrats is just completely false. In fact, both Senator Schumer's office and CNN had to retract that story last night because it was a blatant lie, and we showed them the timestamps from those phone calls. But I want to add something to Thomas Massie's false point. The White House was not obligated to call anyone because the president was acting within his legal authority under Article 2 of the Constitution as Commander-in-Chief of the President of the United States. We gave these calls as a courtesy, and the Democrats are lying about this because they can't talk about the truth of the success of that operation and the success of our United States military and the success of this president and this administration in doing something that past administrations, Democrats too, have only dreamed about.
I still probably wouldn't have told them. One more. Vance obliterates media over Iran strike coverage, tells the one story they won't investigate. This one is not a video, so we'll read just a little bit of this one here. This is from Virginia Kruta. J.D. Vance weighed in on the ongoing dispute between media outlets and the Trump admin regarding the recent military strikes on Iran nuclear facilities, specifically over whether or not the strikes were successful in destroying the intended targets. Trump and Hegseth, alongside of Rubio, declared the strikes a success and pushed back the reports, citing an intelligence report that said otherwise. Vance shared a clip. The exchange explained what he thought was truly telling about the whole scenario, the leaked intelligence report and the media coverage of the strike on Iran. This is such a revealing clip, Vance said in his lengthy post on X. The American media is full of the least curious, the least insightful people in our country. To recap, and out of context, low confidence and incomplete intelligence report was selectively leaked to the media reported on the findings without any real effort to figure out whether they represent any part of, much less the full truth. The way the media has presented the report is contradicted by the IAEA, the Iranians themselves, and the admin's political and defense leadership. More importantly, the media's reports are contradicted by common sense. Vance went on to describe what actually happened during the strikes in Iran, saying, to summarize, a dozen 30,000-pound bunker busters were dropped on Iran's main nuclear site. The other 2 sites that were targeted suffered heavy damage too. No one disputes that they hit their targets. No one disputes the explosive or destructive power of the weapons. No one disputes that a week ago Iran could have easily assembled a nuclear weapon, and now they can't. Everyone stipulated the U.S. military had in fact struck the intended targets and done damage, Vance explained, noting that the only element in question was how much damage was done and how quickly, if they were so inclined, could the Iranians rebuild. Which, and again, I've said off and on that we're sitting here under the question of whether or not they are at a point where they cannot. Alright, briefly on this one, we're going to start to fly through some of these here. It's already 9 o'clock. Trump and Hegseth slam news coverage of U.S. intel report on Iran, say B-2 pilots are upset. From Ivan Pereira. Trump and Hegseth on Wednesday both tried to counter a preliminary U.S. intelligence assessment that the attack on 3 nuclear facilities did limited damage by claiming new accounts of the report demeaned the B-2 pilots who dropped the bombs. Speaking at a news conference, as he was set to leave the NATO summit in the Netherlands, Trump claimed the pilots are devastated by the suggestion that the strikes were not a complete success. I would think that a B-2 pilot who just sat in his seat for 37 hours plus has a little bit thicker skin than that. And again, I get where you're trying to come from off this, but I don't think that they're devastated. He was asked several times Wednesday about the Defense Intelligence Agency's initial assessment that the bombing of the Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordo facilities likely set back Iran's program by only a few months. He acknowledged the receipt of the report, but noted it was incomplete. He snapped back at reporters, raising questions about it, repeating his claim that Iran's nuclear program was obliterated, and shifted the focus to the pilots who carried out the strike. So they're trying to stay ahead of this one at this point. Another one from The Wire. Had a bunch of their stuff today. We have Hegseth's full statement here, which I'm not going to read in full, but I will put in the Discord. We're going to read parts of this one here. Warriors read Hegseth's full statement to America regarding the strike on on Iran's nuclear facilities from Hank Berrien. On Sunday, Hegseth delivered a statement to the American public in which he called the U.S. strike on Iranian nuclear facilities an overwhelming success, noted that Trump has not wavered from his long-stated intention to eliminate Iran's nuclear weapons program. The order we received from our commander-in-chief was focused, it was powerful, and was clear. We devastated the Iranian nuclear program, but it's worth noting the operation did not target Iranian troops or the Iranian people. For the entirety of his time in office, Trump has consistently stated for over 10 years that Iran must not get a nuclear weapon. Full stop. Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could until President Trump. The Operation Trump plan was bold and it was brilliant. Kind of like the bold and the beautiful, almost. Showing the world that American deterrence is back. When the president speaks, the world should listen. In the U.S. military, we can back it up. The most powerful military the world has ever known, no other country on planet Earth could have conducted the operation that the chairman is going to outline this morning. Not even close, just like the Soleimani found out in the first term. Iran found out when the president says 60 days that he seeks peace and negotiation. He means 60 days of peace and negotiation. Otherwise, that nuclear capability will not exist. He meant it. This is not the previous admin. President Trump said no nukes. He seeks peace, and Iran should take that path. He sounded a truth last night saying this: any retaliation by Iran against the U.S. will be met with a force far greater than what was witnessed tonight, signed the President of the United States. So, and some of this is propagandistic, of course, because Hegseth's job is to prop up the admin, so much as it is. I look at a lot of this, I see that they're trying to garner support from the American people. I don't know how it works and where it goes from there, but that is where we are at. From Axios. Now we're talking impeachment. It's impeachment time. Because it's a day that ends in Y. Why? Because we gotta. Trump and AOC exchange blows over impeachment push, from Andrew Solinder over at Axios. The Honorable and Venerable Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez, D-Twitch, sparred online with President Trump on Tuesday after she said his unilateral strikes on Iran are grounds for impeachment. Constitutionally, I know I'm going to watch my viewer count drop as soon as I say this. Constitutionally, she's actually right, I think. But now with precedent that came outside of the constitutional grounds, with people such as Bush, with people such as Clinton, Carter, other Bush, I don't think that's the case anymore, because there'd have to be a lot of posthumous impeachments that went with it if we were to go start enforcing that. But constitutionally, On a baseline, I think she is actually correct. I think that's an impeachable. The debate puts Ocasio-Chavez's impeachment position in the spotlight, even as other Democrats have pushed back on the idea of trying to impeach the president. Yeah, she got slapped by her own people for that one.
This is a Game Chops jam.
Democrats are instead trying to force votes in the House and Senate to limit Trump from being able to carry out such strikes on Iran without congressional authorization going forward, which they tried to do under Brandon too, and, well, that didn't happen either, oddly enough. Those efforts could be in doubt, however, with Iran and Israel accepting a fragile ceasefire. After Chavez said the strikes were absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment on Saturday, Trump posted to Truth Social calling her stupid and one of the dumbest people in Congress. Which that's actually a competition, by the way. The reason for all of her rantings is all the victories the USA has had under the Trump admin. He wrote on Tuesday, "She can't stand the concept of our country being successful again." Instead of her constant complaining, Alexandria should just go back home to Queens. He added, urging the Democrat to go ahead and try impeaching me again. Make my day. Chavez shot back on a post on X saying, "Okay, puppy, Mr. President, don't take your anger out on me. I'm just a silly girl, okay, puppy? Take it on whoever convinced you to betray the American people, okay, and our Constitution by illegally bombing Iran and dragging us into war, okay? Okay, girlfriend. It only took you 5 months to break almost every promise that you made." I know that she doesn't actually have that accent. I'm well aware of that. This goes back to our days with Elaine on the channel. That conversation. Everybody knows that she doesn't have that accent, but I always throw it on there because she tries to convince all of us that she is the kind of person who would have that accent. Even though she grew up in a fairly wealthy area, close to Michael Knowles, actually, oddly enough. She tries to convince everybody that she was a very, very poor person who was in the projects for her entire life. And yes, I would like to see a vote of repealing the emergency war powers so that we don't have to have this debate every single time a new Republican comes in office. Newsweek saying that it's a warning to AOC after impeachment push. From Gabe Wisnant and Shane Croucher. I wonder if he's crouching somewhere. That was a bad joke, I know. U.S. President Trump challenged Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez, D-Twitch, to try impeaching him and said the Democratic Socialists should be more focused on keeping a hold of her seat instead. I don't think that's going to be an issue, actually. She better start worrying about her own primary before she thinks about beating our great Palestinian senator, crying Chuck Schumer, whose career is definitely on very thin ice, Trump said in a post on Truth Social. Sadly enough, I actually think that she wins against Schumer. I think she primaries Schumer, and I think she gets in, especially given the fact that a lot of that vote would come from New York City. I think it turns upstate redder than it's ever been. But I think New York City and its population density carries her over the edge on it. She and her Democratic friends have just hit the lowest poll numbers in congressional history, so go ahead and try impeaching me again. Make my day. I wouldn't say that that's actually much of a threat. I think that's bravado on the position that he knows that he can't really get impeached with the political position that we're in. Crockett as well with this says that she is the one that's supposed to be making the effing decisions on the Iran attack. Again, we go back and it's funny because there are so many people who had such a problem with the fact that Trump used the word, and now Crockett is going to say the same thing with Town Hall. Again, you didn't hear the word from old Uncle J. Edgar, you heard it from a sitting member of Congress. So let's listen to Representative Jasmine Crockett.
And to understand enough about the Constitution to the extent that I'm the one that's supposed to make a fucking decision or at least get a vote.
That's right.
Because Ron is telling me. Right. So literally, like, I
She's the one that's supposed to make the effing decision. Or at least get a vote. From the Hill. This was kind of a snap back and forth over a couple days too. From the start though, Russia ready to help Iran, Kremlin spokesperson says. We'll only go briefly on this because this lasted for exactly 18 hours. From Sarah Fortinsky. Russia stands ready to help Iran in the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, but Tehran first needs to articulate its request, a Kremlin spokesperson said on Monday. Russian presidential spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, you'll remember that name from all the Ukrainian stuff, told reporters at a briefing that the assistance all depends on what Iran needs, according to the TASS, Russia's state-run news agency. We have offered our mediation efforts. This is concrete. We have stated position, which is also very important form of support for Iranian side, Peskov continued. Going forward, everything will depend on what Iran needs at the moment. Peskov noted that Vladimir Putin plans to meet with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. Is that how that one goes? On Monday, but the two plan to discuss options for assistance. Just today, Iranian Foreign Minister will meet with Vladimir Putin, where they will be able to exchange views in wake of dramatic escalation. And in fact, Iranian side will be able to inform us about proposals and vision of current situation. And who could have seen that coming anyway? Because, I mean, Iran and Russia have been allied in the past. Cold War, Gulf War. Another one with brief video, 10 seconds of this. Breaking 911 was just the show that Vladimir Putin meets with Foreign Minister Araghchi in Moscow. Putin tells Araghchi, please convey best wishes to President and Supreme Leader of Iran. For those on the audio platform, it was just kind of a shake of hand. There wasn't a lot of words that were spoken there that could be heard. But in just a few short hours, we change. Eli David. Putin was asked why he's not assisting Iran. His response, Israel today is almost a Russian-speaking country. 2 million people from Soviet Union and Russia live there. We take this into account. Let's listen.
Хочу обратить ваше внимание, что в Израиле проживает почти 2 миллиона человек, выходцев из бывшего Советского Союза и Российской Федерации. Это почти русскоговорящая страна сегодня. Вот. И мы, безусловно, всегда в новейшей российской истории учитываем этот фактор. Это первое. Второе. У нас традиция... Хочу обратить...
I should have checked to see if that was translated or not. That was my bad. So allegedly that's what it said. I thought the translator would come over the top of that. So at the beginning, Putin said Russia would help Iran. That's per the USA Today. But it did not take very long for that to flip-flop From Fox News, Russian official says Moscow has no intention of supplying Iran with warheads following Trump's taunts. From Diana Stancy over at Fox News. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said Moscow is not planning to supply Iran with nuclear warheads, after Trump mocked him for suggesting that other countries would step in and provide Iran with nuclear weapons after the U.S. strikes against Iran nuclear facilities. Medvedev, now the deputy chairman of the Security Council of Russia, originally said Sunday Iran would continue to advance its nuclear program and would receive assistance from other nations to do so. Although Medvedev did not specify any countries, he clarified later Monday he was not talking about Russia. I condemn U.S. strikes on Iran. It failed to achieve objectives, Medvedev said in a Monday post on X. However, Russia has no intention of supplying nuclear weapons to Iran because, unlike Israel, we are parties to nuclear non-proliferation treaty. That's a discussion that's going on in my Discord. Why Israel's not in that particular agreement. I know quite well what this would entail, having overseen nuclear forces as president. But other countries might, and that is what was said. Medvedev's statement came after Trump called him out by name in a post on Truth Social following the Russian leader's original Sunday remark. So, it looks like no, they are not going to be the ones coming out and doing any fighting. On the other end of it, though, just a brief glimpse into the Ukrainian situation again. Reminding you, of course, that they are saying now that they have no intention of helping Iran, but the answer is not never. The possibility always still exists there. From the Associated Press, drone debris found in Ukraine indicates Russia is using new technology from Iran. Last week, Ukrainian drone hunters picking up the debris from Russia's nightly assault on their cities found a weapon that stood out from the rest. It had an advanced camera, a computing platform powered by AI, and a radio link, allowing an operator to pilot it remotely from Russia. It also contained a new Iranian-made anti-jamming technology, per a Ukrainian drone expert. Most Russian attack drones are black, said Serhiy Beskresnov, an electric expert more widely known as Flash. The new ones, he told the Associated Press, was white. Inside there were no markings or labels consistent with Russian-made drones. Instead, the stickers followed a standard Iran labeling system, Beskresnov said. Experts who spoke to the Associated Press said the labels are not conclusive proof, but the English language words are consistent with how Iran marks its drones. It's possible, they said, that it was sold by Iran to Russia to test in combat. So, and remember, Iran does have a very, very good drone program, even if the nuclear program sucks. And yes, they are still tenuously allied. Alright, we had a brief tizzy mentioned while Aaron Burnett was talking in CNN. A brief tizzy and a brief attempt to change the narrative on the American side, with propagandists telling you that this is going to be $15 per gallon gas. I could sit and do a complete rant on why that's not a possibility in and of itself. But we've got this one here from the USA Today. Iran approves the closure of Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil and gas route. For the rest of the world, possibly. And this could definitely screw over China, but we only get like 2% of our gas from the Strait of Hormuz. We get most of ours domestically, I believe. So the US can just sit back and shrug this one off. And I think that's why they backed out of it. Here. From Savannah Kuchar. Iran's parliament approved a measure on June 22nd endorsing the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a major oil transportation route following U.S. airstrikes in Iran. Around 20% of the world's oil and gas flow through the narrow channel connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman. Oman. I always think of that too whenever I see that country. I know it's Oman, but I always think, oh man. Banning says, I'm about 12 minutes behind. The president has the authority to up to a 60-day encouragement prior to seeking congressional approval. Yes, I know that's true. That doesn't make it right. And constitutionally, I don't believe that they would have. I think that's something that changed. I will go and check Article 2 again. Because I want to make sure we get that one properly done. But I think that was an addition to Congress, not the Constitution, to make it easier to go back and do these willy-nilly strikes. Anyway, its closure would likely mean rising fuel costs for global consumers, including Americans. While Iranian state media reported the parliament had agreed to endorse blocking the strait, the decision ultimately belongs to Iran's Supreme National Security Council. And just like that, that's over too. But not before the propaganda got up. I smoked World War III at Black Knight 10K. Paid shill on X. Although he might not be paid anymore. Looks like his blue check went away. Have you ever seen $15 gas before? No, you're about to. Brian Allen says, breaking Iran's parliament just voted to close the Strait of Hormuz. The choke point to nearly 25% of the world's oil per press TV. Here is reality. I need to put some reality on the table for this one. Because I know plenty of people are going to try to be stupid over this one. Here is reality. Here's what's actually going to happen. $15 per gallon gas until inflation comes up to meet $15 per gallon is not going to happen. They can come back and threaten it. They can come back and try it. By the time it gets to be about 5, that's where the market's going to come back out and say, no, we're not going to bear this. F that. We're not doing this again. No matter what it is that you come back and try to say that we're going to come back and do again, we're not doing this crap again. At about 5, that's where hybrids start to become much more prevalent. EVs start to throw everything that they have in their advertising budget and their factories. That's where people start looking for the fuel sipping options. People start selling their SUVs. And the gas companies are not going to allow it to get much higher than that either. I've said this before. I've talked about this consistently on Contemporary. Our friends over on the left like to tell us that the gas companies are so greedy. And they're jacking up the prices because they want to collect all these big profits on you. And nobody else is at fault. It's just the evil gas companies because they want to collect these big prices off of you. And I've said before, I've said it again, that is 100%, excuse my language on this one. This one, the kid is going to hear from old Uncle Edgar. That is 100% unmitigated bullshit. The gas companies collect profit on volume, not on price at the pump. And yes, they will cut off their face. They'll cut off their nose to save their face if their profits start going into the tank. If you get to, right now with inflation being where it is, to the point of $6 a gallon gas, then people are going to stop buying gas. They're going to get what little bit that they need right away, short term, and then just nickel and dime it until they can get to either a more fuel efficient vehicle. They'll start riding their motorcycles, but regardless, if you start getting to 6, people are going to stop buying gas. They're going to do whatever they can to get away from it. the gas companies want gas to be 75 cents a gallon, with the ability to still come back and make some out of a profit off of it. Because at 75 cents a gallon, you go out and buy the biggest, thirstiest SUV that's on the market. You fill every gas can you have. I mean, you're pouring this on your fire to go and get it to start. You're literally burning up gasoline at 75 cents a gallon. We saw this during the COVID, where we were being told that we have to stay in and not move and not do anything, and yet still, because gas was 93 cents a gallon. When I went from Janesville to DC to Florida, the interstates were packed. Just jam-packed. Because people could go and fill up gas and not have a care to it. So no, we are never going to see $15 gas. At least not until inflation comes up to the point to meet that. That is a thing that is not going to happen. And even then, we come back and we look at something like this, and oh, lo and behold, from Reuters, oil prices fall over a week lows as Trump announces Israel-Iran ceasefire. From Anjana Anil. Oil prices tumbled on Tuesday to their lowest level in more than a week as Trump said a ceasefire has been agreed between Iran and Israel, relieving worries of supply disruption in the area. Brent crude fell $2.69 rather, or 3.76% to $68.79 a barrel as of midnight GMT after falling more than 4% earlier in the session and touching its lowest level since June 11th. West Texas Intermediate slumped to $2.70 or 3.94% to $65.46 a barrel, having hit its weakest level since June 9th earlier in the session and falling around 6%. Trump announced on Monday Israel and Iran have fully agreed to a ceasefire, adding that Iran will begin the ceasefire immediately, followed by Israel 12 hours. If both sides maintain peace, the war will officially end after 24 hours, concluding a 12-day conflict. So, how about that $15 gas? BBC with the same thing. Oil prices tumble after Israel agrees to Iran's ceasefire. The Wire, oil prices fall as Iran's weak retaliation gives way to ceasefire. So everyone wants to come back and remind you that no, we're not getting any $15 gas. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. The kids are gonna love it. I'm gonna skip this one just because we've sat back and talked about this. This is the propaganda coming in saying, well, what if this wasn't successful? Going back to Reuters, though, Trump says Washington will hold talks with Iran after U.S., quote, victory from Jeff Mason, Alexander Cornwell, and Parisa Hafezi. Trump hailed the swift end of the war between Iran and Israel and said Washington would likely seek a commitment from Tehran to end its nuclear ambitions at talks with Iranian officials next week. Trump said his decision to join Israel's attacks by targeting Iranian nuclear sites with huge bunker-busting bombs had ended the war, calling it a victory for everyone. It was very severe. It was obliteration, he said, shrugging off an initial assessment by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency that Iran's path to building a nuclear weapon may have been set back by only months. Speaking in The Hague, where he attended the NATO summit on Wednesday, he said he did not see Iran getting involved again in developing nuclear weapons. Tehran has always denied decades of accusations by Western leaders that it's seeking nuclear arms. Yeah, that's been something that's been going on back and forth in our lives since I was a little kid. 1995, I was 11. Iran is 2 days away from getting a nuclear weapon. A month away, 4 hours away. We're going to end them. We're going to talk to them next week with Iran We may sign an agreement. I don't know. To me, I think it's necessary. Anxious Iranians and Israelis sought to resume normal life after the most intense confrontation ever between the two foes. So with that, it does look like it should be over. And we should be right in the time of 24 hours too. So unless somebody blew something up this morning while I was on air and I didn't know about it, maybe we should go check X. Hey look, trending is not Iran anymore. NPC is speculating whether Iran's strategic blunders paved the way for a humiliating defeat. I don't want to speculate on that. I don't want to embarrass them. I want them to come back and, actually stay peaceful. Because my first position, again, anti-war. Alright, some of the post-war stuff. From Reuters again, Iran turns to internal crackdown in the wake of the 12-day war. This, unfortunately, of course, comes from the fact that in the midst of the war, some of the dissidents, some of the freedom fighters against the IRGC started to rise back up. From Parisa Hafezi and Ahmad Rashid. Iranian authorities are pivoting away from a ceasefire, or pivoting from a ceasefire, not away from, with Israel to intensify an internal security crackdown across the country with mass arrests, executions, and military deployments, particularly in the restive Kurdish region, officials and activists said. Within days of Israel's airstrikes beginning on June 13th, Iranian security forces started a campaign of widespread arrests, accompanied by an intensified street presence based around checkpoints, the officials and activists have said. Some in Israel have exiled opposition groups and had hoped the military campaign, which targeted Revolutionary Guards and internal security forces, as well as nuclear sites, would spark a mass uprising and overthrow the Islamic Republic. While Reuters had spoken to numerous Iranians angry at the government for policies they believe had led to the Israeli attack, there had been no sign yet of any significant protest against the authorities. However, one senior Iranian official said two other senior officials briefed on the internal security issues said the authorities were focused on the threat of possible internal unrest, particularly in Kurdish areas. So, yes, now that they're not focusing on one thing, they're going to go put their attention on the other and take down the opposition, which is probably going to lead us to go back into another regional conflict over this one. Because we got to go sell democracy to people who don't really want democracy. So, that is Iran. That's 12 days of bombs and bullets. And that is where we are at. From Fox News, Trump and Rubio secure Rwanda-Congo peace treaty amid Pakistan's Nobel Prize nomination. For those of you keeping score at home, Rwanda and Congo have been going at each other's throats since 2022. That appears to also be ending at this point here from Alexandra Koch over at Fox News. President Trump announced on Friday he and Secretary of State Marco Rubio had secured a wonderful peace treaty between Rwanda and Congo, as Pakistan formally nominated him for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize. That would make me laugh, by the way. We run from he's going to go start World War III to Nobel Peace Prize for brokering peace. Let me just have a look at. Let's get a map up here. Open in maps. Opening in maps means Thursday show. No, I don't want to do summer getaway to Rwanda. So we are in Southern Africa, below the tropic, We have small landlocked nation of Rwanda versus large, almost landlocked nation, except for one little teeny tiny section of port for the Congo. What country is this? I don't even know. And some little teeny tiny country that doesn't have a name on it in Africa. Around that, but yes, these two powers have been at each other for about 3 years at this point. That is going to be over. For those of you listening back on here, we are next to Gabon, which was also getting ready to pop off at one point. Angola, Zambia, Tanzania. We're close to Kenya and Uganda. So, just a definite place that I think a lot of people wouldn't have been able to point to on a map otherwise. And being the fact that it's not the Middle East, we didn't really have a lot of coverage of this one. I remember when we were talking about Niger and Gabon, and those two countries popping off internally, but this is I don't even know what this was a dispute over. Was it resources? Was it border? I don't know. Perhaps Fox News will tell us. The president noted representatives from Rwanda and Congo will be in Washington on Monday to sign the documents. Alright, I gotta check on something here. Family stuff. Yeah, I'm good with that. I can't type right now, but I'm good with that. He went on to discuss the chances at winning the Nobel Peace Prize, claiming he wouldn't get one no matter what I do. This is a great day for Africa, and quite frankly, a great day for the world. I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for this. I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping a war between India and Pakistan. I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping the war between Serbia and Kosovo. I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for keeping peace between Egypt and Ethiopia. A massive Ethiopian-built dam, stupidly financed by the US, substantially reduces water flowing into the Nile. And I won't get a Nobel Peace Prize for doing the Abraham Accords. Oops. Let's get back on the Instagram. In the Middle East, which, if all goes well, will be loaded to the brim with additional countries signing on, and I will unify the Middle East for the first time in the ages. But yeah, they're not really telling us what the war was over. Let's back up here just a bit. Let me see if there's actually what this is for. We'll go back to Wikipedia because it's good enough for term papers. A conflict between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda in 22, after Rwandan forces entered the country to provide military support to the March 23rd movement rebel group, including fighting alongside them against the Congolese military and pro-government militias. So that's what it is. It was kind of what I anticipate and suggest happened with where was I going with that? With the Ukraine and Russia. Lost my train of thought there for a second. Where the Donbass region wanted to break away from from the Ukraine. I would suggest, if it was me, that it would have been independence, not necessarily joining Russia, but to break out to be their own country for independence. And the Ukraine told them no, so then they petitioned Russia to help them free themselves. From just that initial paragraph, it kind of sounds like that's what happened here, where Rwanda came in and helped a group of anti-government Congolese say, hey, we want to break away from the DRC. but the government said no to us. Since the Second Congo War and eastern provinces of the DRC have been on site of an ongoing insurgency by various rebel groups, most notably the March 23rd movement in North Kivu and its Twirwaneho affiliate in South Kivu, and the Allied Democratic Forces in Ituri in North Kivu. So, yep, it's Rwanda trying to help out the people of the Congo is what caused that one, and now we might have some peace. Do you think we'll get another country, another little nation in there? I don't know. The BBC briefly on this one, Rwanda and DR Congo agree to draft peace deal to end the conflict. From Basilio Rukanga. Officials from Rwanda and the DRC have reached a draft agreement aimed at ending decades of conflict. The breakthrough, mediated by US and Qatar, provides for the disengagement, disarmament, and conditional integration of armed groups fighting in eastern DR and the Congo. Rwanda denies widespread accusations that it backs one of those groups, the M23, which has sieged large parts of the region this year. This might be a new song. I've never heard this one before. It's from Stardew, I know that. The Stardrop song. I know that one. It also includes provisions for a joint security mechanism to prevent future flare-ups. The peace deal is expected to be formally signed this week. The deal could open the way for billions of dollars in Western investment in the mineral-rich region, which has been plagued by conflict for 3 decades. However, analysts say that many questions still remain about the contents of the peace deal. So, it does look like it's going through though, so we'll see what happens with this. We'll see what happens in Washington when we talk next time. And the big one for our Trumpy friends, NATO allies agreed to higher 5% defense spending target. From Holly Elliott, this has been a big talking point, and Trump talking about their fair share everywhere. Because prior to everything else, NATO members were required to spend 2% of their GDP in defense, both to their own countries and then to the alliance itself. And now it looks like they have agreed to raise it to 5%. I'd be curious to see what happens with that and how that goes with their, quote, universal health care. Because it's been speculated, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it's been speculated for a while that the big part of the reason that they can do this, that they can stay solvent or semi-solvent doing universal health care, is because they spend almost none of their GDP on their own defense. Because we do their defense for them. I do want to be a big shot. NATO allies on Wednesday agreed to more than double their defense spending, target from 2% of GDP to 5% by 2035, in the most decisive move from the alliance in more than a decade. In a joint declaration, the Western military bloc said it was united in the face of profound security threats and challenges, in particular the long-term threat posed by Russia to Euro-Atlantic security and the persistent threat of terrorism. Allies commit to invest 5% of GDP annually on core defense requirements, as well as defense and security-related spending, by 2035 to ensure individual collective obligations continue. The 5% figure is made up of at least 3.5% of GDP that should be spent on pure defense, with the remainder going to security and defense-related critical infrastructure to ensure, the statement said, our civil preparedness and resilience, unleash innovation, and strengthen our defense industrial base. So, and I don't know if the U.S. will continue to front the money that we do front for it, or if that will free up more money to get things taken care of economically over here at home. I think that in itself would be kind of nice. And I wonder what that would look like for returning investment if we did get to come back and spend at home? Would that be a nice big tax cut? Would it be a pay down of the national debt? Would it be bigger toys that make the noise? I don't know. I'd like to see that. All right. So in 12 minutes, Mr. Fanning is going to come and catch up to us, and we're going to talk about his hometown at this point. We're going to shift gears and talk a little bit more about local politics from the Associated Press. Who is Zohran Mamdani? State lawmaker seeks to become New York's first Muslim and Indian American mayor. I don't really care what his skin color is or who he prays to. I want to know if he can effectively balance the budget and make this place an economic powerhouse like Giuliani did. From Philip Marcello, while he announced his run for mayor back in October, Zohran Mamdani was a state lawmaker unknowns to most New York City residents. On Tuesday, the 33-year-old marked his stunning political ascension when he declared victory in the DNC primary from a Queens rooftop bar after former New York Governor Andy Cuomo conceded. I don't know why Andy Cuomo decided he wanted to go back and do this, by the way. That was a stupid choice. While the race's ultimate outcome has yet to be confirmed by a ranked choice count scheduled for July 1st, here's a look at a one-time rapper seeking to become the city's first Muslim and Indian American mayor. The youngest mayor in generations. Mamdani was born in Kampala, Uganda, to Indian parents and became an American citizen in 18 shortly after graduating college. So, by the way, for people like my friend Wiz Political, who is sitting here trying to fearmonger and complain and cry about the fact that, well, now he's going to go back and run for president. He can't. He was born in Uganda to Indian parents, not American parents. He can't even pull the American citizen's card at this point. Oh, excuse me. Need more energy drink. But I'm going to have to go make some room before I drink some of that. And then get out of here and go have some coffee. He lived with his family briefly in Cape Town, South Africa, before moving to New York City when he was 7. Mamdani's mother, Mira Nair, was an award-winning filmmaker whose credits include Monsoon Wedding, The Namesake, and Mississippi Masala. His father, Mahmoud Mamdani, is an anthropology professor at Columbia. Mamdani married Rama Duwaji, a Syrian-American artist, earlier this year. The couple, who met on the dating app Hinge, live in the Astoria section of Queens. Mamdani attended the Bronx High School of Science, where he co-founded the public school's first cricket team, according to his legislative bio. Cricket. Who remembers Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original, the movie? I got another listen for you here. Cricket. Cricket? Nobody plays cricket anymore. You have to know what a crumpet is to play cricket. With Raphael being the only turtle that actually has a distinctive New York accent, for whatever reason. They were all raised at the same time on the same television programs and everything else, but the rest of the turtles either have the genuine Midwest accent or Michelangelo's notable California inflection, and Raphael sounds like he was born in the middle of Queens. After college, he worked as a foreclosure prevention counselor in Queens, helping residents avoid eviction. The job, he says, inspired him to run for public office. Mamdani also had a notable side hustle in the local hip-hop scene, rapping under the moniker Young Cardamom, and later Mr. Cardamom. During his first run for a state lawmaker, Mamdani gave a nod to his brief foray into music, describing himself as a B-list rapper. I would say D-list rapper if it was me. Nani, a song he made in 19 to honor his grandmother, even found new life and a vastly wider audience as his mayoral campaign gained momentum. His critics, meanwhile, have seized on his lyrics from Salam, his 2017 ode to being Muslim in New York, argue his views are too extreme for New Yorkers. So, he is, at this point, the mayoral candidate. His major rival has conceded, so I don't even know if the ranked choice is going to affect him or not. But a lot of people are up in arms about this. From the BBC, how Zoran Mamdani stunned New Yorkers with a mayoral primary victory. Don't really think he stunned New Yorkers very much. He spouted a bunch of socialist nonsense. We'll talk about that in just a bit as well. People bought into it and said, oh yeah, that's right, and Andy Cuomo got fined and fired from the governorship for his COVID handling. It's not really stunning, folks. It's not. From Nada Tawfiq. Briefly, we're not going to go too deep into this. Zoran Mamdani decided in his quest to become New York City's mayor, he would walk the entire length of Manhattan, starting at 7 one Friday evening in early June. By the time he was done, it was 2:30 a.m. Video of the feat on social media captures New Yorkers frame by frame, giving him thumbs up and embracing him. Several clap for the next mayor. He's doing it, he tells followers, because New Yorkers deserve a mayor they can see and hear and even yell at. Okay, well, that's fine that you go back and do it in Manhattan. Let's see how you do in the middle of the Bronx. Try Williamsburg sometime. Fanning, help me out here. What are some other neighborhoods I can throw out the dude? It takes only a quick scroll through the 33-year-old Mamdani's social media accounts to understand just how different his style is from a traditional politician, rejecting typical sound bites for a more unrehearsed feel. After he won the New York Democratic primary on Tuesday, that playbook is getting accolades for its ability to attract a large coalition. Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a bit. I have a segment on that too. He's going to push the mom and pops out of business. This is a wake-up call for the Democratic Party, said pollster Frank Luntz. The big loser of the night wasn't his main opponent, former Governor Andy Cuomo, he said, but Chuck U. Schumer, who represents the Democratic establishment. Grassroots Democrats are demanding a more ideological, confrontational approach to policy and politics. In the time of President Trump, Mr. Luntz said. Before Tuesday night's wins, Cuomo and several Democrats mocked Mamdani's platform, including free public buses and city-run grocery stores, as unrealistic, which it might actually be. Millions were spent attacking him, but the millennial left-wing state assemblyman, who represents diverse neighborhoods of Astoria, Queens, clearly connected with social media age voters who crave his brand of authenticity and accessibility. He's not authentic. That's the worst part. They call that authenticity. He is not authentic in the least. He knows what the people want to hear and how to make himself have more power. I've listened to the dude talk. Let's keep going on this one from NPC News. This is MSNBC, the humbling of Andrew Cuomo, who is no longer to MSNBC, so straight under the bus he goes. I'm going to skip this one. This is an op-ed. And we've got a bunch more to go through, and well, we're running up on time. 2 hours and 15 minutes so far. So, Charlotte Alter, in the wake of Mamdani, put this post out that I wanted to sit here and talk about. People over about 45 hear socialist and think he's going to abolish private property and send the rich to the gulag. People under 45 hear socialist and think he wants higher taxes on the rich to strengthen the social safety net. This is why people are talking in circles about this. The reality, and this one didn't get any engagement, lame. Go find Charlotte Alter's tweet and then go find mine and go like it, please. The reality is neither are correct. What's actually going to happen when we bring a socialist into office is that the socialists will attempt to break the middle class to create a unified underclass subject to arrest for criticism of the regime while centralizing power and taking bribes from the Politburo to look the other way. I'm going to expand on this because I ran out of characters because I'm not paying for X premium. Typically in socialist countries, they hear the same thing that people my age are hearing now and thinking this is the greatest thing in the world, where the rich people, and the Nationalist Socialist Workers' Party, the Jews, in either case it's the same thing, are the source of every single one of your problems. And if you centralize more power in the government and give us the power, we will solve all your problems by taking everything away from the rich. The powerful. You will not have to worry about the powerful anymore. And they give that promise, and they sell that promise. Yeah, I love that. Quest Fang says the rich are going to leave. And all the little socialists say, oh, do you promise? Because they've been told, again, that the rich are the source of all their problems. But going back to that, yes, the socialist politician tells you that the rich are the source of all of your problems, and if we just break them down and confiscate everything that they have, then you can be the rich too and live like the rich. And then in practice, once they get in, again, they don't go after the rich, they go after the middle class. They break the middle class so that the vast majority of the population is the working / usually in those situations, slave classes. And where instead they were promised that they were going to get to work on their slam poetry and be the artists and everything else because they don't have to worry about money anymore. Most of them go off into the mines because that's what the government needs. They go into the factories, they go into the mines. And that's what the government needs. So, and I mean, they can buy their way out by doing party faithful things. Or turning in people who are dissenting. They can buy a little bit of reprieve or maybe get moved from the mines into the breadline. And the person serving the breadline, not the person standing in the breadline. Meanwhile, the rich, that everyone was told was the source of all their problems, become the Politburo, and they can turn back and bribe the socialist politician to look the other way while they continue to screw the now unified lower class. That's what has happened in every socialist country in history. Seriously, go give my little X some love over here. Republicans pounce moment from Fox News. Republicans use Mamdani bombshell victory over Cuomo as ammunition to blast Democrats as extremists. From Paul Steinhauser. Yeah, a lot of your stuff is going to go to Delaware. I can tell you that. Fanning says, the finance is the golden goose of New York. He's going to kill it. I would argue that Cuomo already did. And de Blasio as well. But I get where you're coming from. That's why so much of it is in Delaware at this point. The political earthquake that rocked the nation's most populous city may prove to be a gift for Republicans aiming to paint Democrats as extreme radicals ahead of next year's midterms. As Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani, a 33-year-old state assembly member from Queens who was originally from Uganda, was on his way to topping the former 3-term New York State Governor Andy Cuomo and the rest of the large field of New York City's Democratic mayoral primary, Republicans pounced. The National Republican Congressional Committee was one of the first out of the gate to capitalize on the leftward lurch firing off an email release that claimed the new face of the Democratic Party just dropped and is straight out of a socialist nightmare. Aiming to tie House Democrats to Mamdani, NRCC spokesman Mike Marinella argued that every vulnerable House Democrat will own him and every single Democrat running in a primary will fear him. Elise Stefanik of New York, a top ally of President Trump, who's seriously considering a run for Empire State Governor next year, also pounced. Stefanik claimed that a radical defund the police communist, raging anti-Semite will likely win the New York City Democratic mayoral primary. Even J.D. Vance got into the game, writing congratulations to the new leader of the Democratic Party in a post on Blue Sky. Veteran Republican strategist Colin Reed, yeah, that Colin Reed, by the way, told Fox News that the Democratic Party is trying to convince people that the tail is not wagging the dog. They don't answer to the more extreme elements of their party. Now that entire effort is undercut by socialists winning handily in a bellwether election to determine who's going to run America's largest city. I don't think, honestly, by the way, and I say this cautiously because, well, let's be completely honest with it. While I'm not a Republican, I think the Democrats have gone off the deep end, and I'd like to see something go out and check them into bringing themselves back into a more union-centrist party. So I have two parties I have to debate, rather than just saying I begrudgingly vote for the Republican because the left wing is so far off their rocker that they can't do anything. I don't think that this race has as much of an impact as people are trying to say that it is. I think they're astroturfing this. I do. I mean, Cuomo, de Blasio, Adams, none of them have had that much effect on politics. Yeah, he ran on affordability. He ran on the idea of government grocery stores, which is a stupid idea. And like Fanning had pointed out too, when you run the government grocery store, number one, you're not beating the big box grocery stores that people say are going out and gouging people, because grocery store in the big box sense is their overhead is 1%. But as was pointed out, your little family-owned bodegas that are on every fourth block in New York City, they have to, in order to just keep their lights on, run a 5 to 10% margin on everything just to stay afloat. So then you come in and you run the government grocery store. You're not beating the Kroger out of town. You're beating all those little bodegas out of town. Many of them which are immigrant owned. And what's worse is because of taxpayer subsidies, yes, you can go back and even run the bigger ones back out of town too, giving people no choice as to where they get their food. And then the government being completely in control of the entire supply of food in certain areas like New York City. Realistically, with taxpayer subsidy, a government-run grocery store can run below cost on a lot of things to go back and beat out their competition. And then yes, you have one entity, the government, now controlling the supply of food. And guess who doesn't get sold to at that point if they become a dissident? So as far as New York goes, I mean, it's going to be an interesting race to watch and see what happens and see what he can actually do with something like that. I think his powers are going to be highly limited based on the New York Constitution and the New York City Charter. But it'll be interesting to see what happens and where this goes in the fight for the heart of the American people. Yeah, 5% if they're lucky. Let's talk about the shooting in Wayne from CBS News. One injured suspect dead after shooting at church in Wayne, Michigan. CBS reporting Nick Lentz, Keith Kolb, and Paula Wethington. And that's the dude right there. One person was shot at a church in Wayne on Sunday, and an alleged gunman was killed following the shooting, police said. So, weirdly enough, he won't have to answer to his crimes. Or answer any questions about his crimes, because dead men tell no tales. Chief Ryan Strong said 911 calls about the shooting at Cross Point Community Church on the 36,000 block of Glenwood Road started coming in around 11:06 a.m. Investigators say the suspect, later identified by officials as 31-year-old Brian Anthony Browning from Romulus, Michigan, was driving recklessly when he arrived at the church. The suspect exited his vehicle wearing a tactical vest, armed with long guns and a handgun. Strong said the man started firing one of his weapons at the church from the outside. One of the parishioners struck the man with his vehicle, and at least 2 staff members shot him, killing the attacker. Police said the suspect was pronounced dead at the scene by Wayne Fire Rescue. I hope the city council opposes him on grocery stores. Yeah, we'll have to keep up on that. Just that's going to be the major experiment that comes out of this. A security guard who shot at the gunman spoke with CBS News on Monday. It took me a minute to process what I was seeing outside the front doors. He was spraying bullets. There's bullets all through the front of the building. There's bullet holes on tables, in the lobby, in the chairs. There's bullet holes everywhere. Jade Trombley said, "The wait is coming. I know I did something yesterday that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. I took a life yesterday, but I saved a lot of lives." That is to you. Hats off to this guy right here. I know everything's a mess right now. I'm supposed to be going to get my hair cut later. We're having an argument about that right now, but hats off to this guy. Sorry that he has to deal with that post-traumatic stress for the rest of his life, but the lives that he did save will thank him. A live stream of the church's morning service showed parishioners, including several women and children, running into the back of the church when they heard the gunshots. Cross Point Community Church Pastor Bobby Kelly Jr. said there were about 150 people at the service at the time. So, no word in this article on motive. It does look like they may have identified and found a motive at this point. From the Detroit Free Press, police identify Wayne Church gunmen, say mental health crisis may have played a role. The heavily armed man who tried to burst into a Sunday morning service at Cross Point Community Church in Wayne, but was thwarted by church security, who shot him dead, as identified by police as 31-year-old Brian Browning of Romulus. What's more, one worshiper who asked for prayers and thanked God no one else was killed told the Free Press the church had trained for such a situation, credited it with protecting all those attending, which included children. By late morning on June 23rd, police said it was still unclear why Browning, who was single, had targeted the church at 36125 Glenwood Road, but detectives were suggesting it may have been the result of a mental health crisis. In today's society, any training that can preserve life is beneficial, Wayne Deputy Chief Finley Carter said, adding that in today's charged climate, people should remain vigilant and aware and prepared for an event. Browning, police said, had no previous contact with Wayne Police Department or criminal history, and his mother, with whom he lived, is a member of the church. In the past year, he attended 2 or 3 services there. So, no motive, but it looks like dude just went nuts. Speaking of people going nuts, let's talk about Vance Belter again, for whatever reason. In one of the oddest articles that I've seen, letter to FBI from shooting suspect made wild claims about Klobuchar and Walz, source said. Which, I mean, the Minnesota Star Tribune is already trying to put this out as the rantings of a crazy person. from Jeff Day. And is this paywalled? We can get around that shit. Excuse my language. I know, I'm getting really loose on that. We gotta fix that. I've never played Splatoon, by the way. I want to. Alright. There we go. Haha, I got past your paywall. I got past your paywall. In a rambling conspiratorial letter addressed to the FBI. But again, you put this charged language in here to try to discredit what this guy is saying because, you know, you got to come back and try to distance him from Walz. Addressed to the FBI, alleged assassins Vance Belter claimed Governor Walz instructed him to kill U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar so Walz could run for the U.S. Senate, according to the two people familiar with the contents of the letter. The letter is the clearest evidence yet of Belter's mindset after the targeted violence against Minnesota politicians. Last week, it is incoherent, 1.5 pages long, confusing and hard to read, according to two people familiar with the letter's contents. It includes Belter alleging he had been trained by the U.S. military off the books, and that Walz, who's not running for the Senate, had asked him to kill Klobuchar and others. The Beanie Boy actually brought up a good point on that because no, Walz is not currently running against Klobuchar for this. But also, that race doesn't happen for another 5 years. Asked to comment about the letter, Hennepin County Attorney spokesperson Daniel Borgert-Pepping said the office cannot comment on an open investigation, but due to the seriousness of the allegations it contains, we will state only that we have seen no evidence that allegations regarding Governor Walz are based in fact. Oh yeah, it goes against the narrative. Walz's spokesman, Teddy Shan, said in a statement Friday afternoon that this tragedy continues to be deeply disturbing for all Minnesotans. Governor Walz is grateful to the law enforcement who apprehended the shooter, and he's grateful to the prosecutors who will ensure justice is swiftly served. And again, like I said, the hardest part of this is the fact that they come back out here and they try to make this entire thing into a rambling conspiracy theory instead of letting us actually have the discussion. Did Walz have something to do with this? And I mean, this guy's been linked to Walz from the very beginning, from the moment that we first heard his name. There's been something that's not been right about this. I don't know what the actual situation is here. I will fully come out and admit and confess to the fact that I have absolutely zero idea what the motivation was, what happened with this, where this goes, and what we do next out of this. This man was a deeply, deeply disturbed individual in one way or the other. But I have seen a lot of evidence that Democrats will sacrifice their own to get some sort of political end out of it as well. We may never know what actually happened with this. We'll be fed a media narrative for the rest of our lives. But we might never, ever, ever know what came out of this one. I mean, we're never going to see the manifesto. Whatever happened to the Covenant Manifesto? When are we ever going to see that? And I mean, they go on the same side of things, trying to paint this guy as some crazy prepper. He's just some crazy prepper, which I think in and of itself is degrading to anybody who is a prepper. Like, people like the BBC will come back out here and say that someone like me, who has a garden with 12 plants in it, out back, is a crazy prepper. Somebody who cans and jars and preserves is a crazy prepper. No matter the fact, by the way, that I lived for 6 years in abject poverty. To them, I'm still just a nutsoid, crazy prepper. Because I want to keep stuff that I made myself preserved in jars. Stuff that I grew, stuff that I made in jars for sometime in the future that we can pull out in case something does happen. Or just when we want to go have a cool taco dinner. Briefly from the BBC, Robinson, Levinson King reporting. The suspect accused of fatally shooting a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband in a gun rampage last week was a doomsday prepper, according to the FBI. The wife of the accused told investigators the family was among a small group of Americans who prepare for major or catastrophic incidents, said a court document. Yeah, you should. Belter has been charged with killing Emerita, Speaker, Melissa Hortman, and her husband Mark last Saturday. He was also seriously wounded Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette. Police say there's evidence he was planning to target others. You should be prepping. You should. All right. I want to skip around on this because Political Magazine I don't like using because it's very, very op-ed-y. So let's skip that one. Let's go to the New York Post instead. Trump White House pulls executive privilege shield for ex-Biden aide, testifying over Biden's mental acuity. From Ryan King and Josh Christensen. The White House counsel Tuesday said ex-Biden aide Neera Tanden is not shielded by executive privilege and must provide unrestricted testimony on former President Biden's mental acuity. The decision was issued before Tanden appeared before the GOP-led House Oversight Committee for closed-door testimony Tuesday to give insights for the panel's investigation of the Biden's cognition and use of AutoPen. Executive privilege is the right that presidents enjoy to keep some of their internal communications confidential. It was invoked by several alumni of the first Trump admin during the Democrat-led congressional scrutiny. After balancing the legislative and executive branch interests as required under the accommodation process, it's the president's view that this presents an exceptional situation in which the congressional need for more information outweighs the executive branch's interest in maintaining confidentiality, wrote Gary Lakowski, Deputy White House Counsel, in a letter to Tanden. President Trump has determined that he will not assert immunity to preclude you from testifying before the House Oversight Committee, he added. So, they're looking at getting some information, but it looks like this is the person who was actually using the AutoPen and making the signatures. She was the director, of course, per Fox News. Top Biden aide admits to Congress she directed AutoPen signatures without knowing who gave the final approval. From Alex Schemmel, Elizabeth Elkind over at Fox News. Whatever that was a heavy one. I felt that in the house. A former top aide to President Biden said she was authorized to direct AutoPen signatures, but was unaware of who in the president's inner circle was giving her final clearance, per a source familiar with the aide's closed-door testimony in front of Congress on Tuesday. Neera Tanden, the former director of Biden's domestic policy, testified for hours Tuesday during an interview in front of the House Oversight Committee, which is investigating former president's mental acuity and this use of automatic signature tool that allowed aides to sign pardons, memos, and other important documents on Biden's behalf. During Tanden's interview before Congress, which lasted more than 5 hours, she told lawmakers that in her role as staff secretary and senior advisor to the former president, between 21 and 23, she was authorized to direct AutoPen signatures on behalf of Biden, an Oversight Committee official told Fox News. So, there are a couple things to take away from this that I look at. Now, the article, of course, says that she is saying without final approval and not knowing who gave the final approval. But that might be a save my own bacon kind of thing as well. It's entirely a possibility. It's entirely possible she was the one who was giving the final approval given her role as the chief domestic advisor. And I do see that this warrants in and of itself a further investigation into this to make a decision as to what to do about this. Now, yes, there might be someone else above the chain, or again, she might be saving her own bacon saying, well, I don't know who gave the approval, I just hit the auto pen. Quest says he should have at least had to press the button himself. That's fair. That's a fair assessment of the situation. Alright. What else do we have? We have a couple more going on here. Let's skip this one out of Paris. I know we had a bunch of foreign policy stuff, but I'm going to hold off on that one. Alright, from Politico, not magazine. Florida sprints ahead with Alligator Alcatraz Immigration Detention Center project. From Gary Fineout and Bruce Ritchie. Hey, we're under 3 hours on the live stream right now. And we're almost through the main news. And I only have a handful of things on things I like, things I hate. We got about 10 minutes less on the recording. We might hit under the 3 hour mark today. For the first time since... God, when's the last time we did a 2 hour show? Well, no, we did the 1.5 hour show because I had an ultrasound to go to. Because I wanted to see my daughter. Other than that, yeah, I think it's been 3 hour shows since we switched to morning again. This is from Gary Fineout and Bruce Ritchie. Florida's headline-grabbing push to create Alligator Alcatraz, an immigration detention center deep in the Everglades, happened swiftly with little apparent notice to state legislators responsible for paying for it, or to local officials who will have to have it on their doorsteps. It may also prove to be one of Florida man Ron DeSantis' most aggressive moves during his 6+ years in office. Citing the governor's emergency powers, the state's emergency management director told Miami-Dade that it was taking control of the Everglades airstrip, now owned by Miami-Dade, and located mainly in Collier County, in order to begin building the multi-million-dollar facility. Wonder how long that's actually going to take. Florida man declared an emergency on immigration during Biden's presidency and has since extended it. After Trump took office, the governor has pledged that Florida will do whatever it takes to assist Trump's admin in its mass deportation efforts. Time is of the essence, Kevin Guthrie, the state's emergency management director, wrote in a letter to Miami-Dade officials late on Monday. We must act swiftly to ensure readiness and continuity in our statewide operations to assist the federal government with immigration enforcement. Alligator Alcatraz, though. Not much is publicly known about the plans for the detention center until A.G. Utmeyer, DeSantis' former chief of staff, who was appointed to the job in February, talked up the idea of Alligator Alcatraz on social media last week. The chosen site is a long airstrip that was built as part of a massive project abandoned in '70 amid environmental opposition. So, yeah, they've been trying to build this prison for a while. I remember talking to people about this in the 90s and in the early 2000s as being something that was brought up in our social problems class in high school. So this is not a new thing, but this is getting extra push based on DeSantis' position, his position with Trump, and his position with Trump and what's going on with immigration. So there's a lot going on here, that's for sure. See, I don't think there's any other new news. Yep. Alligator Alcatraz sparks outcry from indigenous tribes as construction speeds ahead. Which, I mean, that's a given in any major construction project in this country. I don't want to belittle the sacredness of some of these grounds, but I also want to point out when everything is sacred, nothing is sacred. And every time some major, especially conservative project comes up, or project associated with conservatives, such as the Keystone Pipeline, the ground that it's on is suddenly sacred. From what I understand, the Ben & Jerry's grounds are sacred too, but not a word was said about that. Or if it was, it didn't get public play. Construction is moving rapidly on controversial migrant detention center deep in the Everglades, despite growing concerns from Native American tribes who call the area home. The facility is being built on an old airstrip at the Dade Collier Training and Transition Airport, roughly an hour and 45 minutes west of Miami. The state is using emergency powers to take over the county-owned land and construct a center that can contain up to 5,000 migrants. The site is surrounded by wildlife, swampland, and alligators, but it's also adjacent to Native American land. Members of the Miccosukee tribe say the project threatens their way of life and the fragile Everglades ecosystem that rely on for food, water, and traditional medicine. I started to get upset at the way that he described the landscape as if it's a wasteland. Betty Osceola, a Miccosukee tribal member, said after the comments made by Florida AG, James Otheimer. I guess he's Florida man too, but not the Florida man. He talks about there's only alligators and pythons out there, and I'm like, what about me? I'm out here. My family's out here. Osceola lives about 3 miles from the site and says the entrance to the new detention center is dangerously close to tribal ceremonial grounds. Well, did you show up for town halls? Did you do this? Did you do that? Or did you just suddenly decide that this was tribal grounds after the fact? And yes, I will give you the benefit of the doubt and say that if you did show up for the town halls and such like that, then yes, this is possibly wrong. But not something that we know about right offhand either. Alright. We said we were skipping the music festival one. A little bit of an update on Judge Hannah Dugan. Mexican man allegedly aided by Wisconsin judge agrees to a guilty plea. So yes, he's pleading guilty to illegal immigration. Briefly, because this is a very short article. The Mexican man, who prosecutors say briefly evaded arrest with the help of a Wisconsin judge, has agreed to plead guilty to illegally entering the United States. Federal prosecutors in Milwaukee on Monday filed a plea agreement with Eduardo Flores Ruiz. I kind of wonder what the agreement was on that one. We'll find out. Resolving an illegal entry charge filed against him after federal agents sought his arrest at a Milwaukee courthouse on April 18th. They don't say what he got out of the deal. She is still facing charges. There was a little bit of outrage suggesting that her charges were dropped. It does not appear that that is the case at this point. If there is any pushback to that, please put that in the Discord for me. Thank you. But it looks like he is going home, apparently. And the last one that we're going to do here, we'll do this from a local site though, goes on our redistricting. Because remember, it's only a fair map in Wisconsin if every single district touches either Milwaukee or Dane County. And it's in its population center enough to swing the voting of the district. If even one district doesn't touch those two counties, then it's Republican gerrymandering, and they might win a seat. All right, Wisconsin Supreme Court refuses to hear a challenge to the state's congressional district boundaries. Yes, that means that it's over and it's done, and we're going to keep the maps that were drawn under the 2020 census at this point. Oh, this isn't a written article, this is a video article. Hey, a video article!
also refused to hear challenges brought by Democrats seeking to throw out the battleground state's current congressional district boundaries before the 2026 midterms. Democrats asked the court to redraw the maps, which would have put 2 of the state's 6 congressional seats currently held by Republicans into play. This is the second time the court has refused to hear those challenges.
I heard grunting, and I got out of the...
All right, I don't know what's happening with that, but I don't know why this guy's hearing grunting. So, gerrymandering, that's a big thing. And both sides do it. I love how quiet Democrats get online, or try to say that it's because of Republican gerrymandering that they have to go back and do this. When you say that Republicans gerrymander and try to win seats, and then you show them a map of Illinois' congressional districts. Or Maryland is another bad one. I think New Mexico is a really, really bad one too. But you show them some of these states that they have just gerrymandered into the ground. I mean, the Illinois one, I would say, would be grounds for not a congressional hearing, but a court hearing to say, hey, is this actually a fair map or not? But regardless, I would say it's grounds, but I still wouldn't support a challenge to it. Do you know why? If you want to draw the maps, then build a better platform and win. And I don't get this whole thing where both sides are doing it too, are coming out trying to use the situation to come back out and change the maps to go back in their favor, even after they've completely lost and been obliterated by the opposite party. In states like mine, I mean, Democrats can't get a foothold in Wisconsin because of all their rural stuff. All their power in the state legislature is concentrated in Milwaukee and Madison, and yes, they do have the biggest or not the biggest, obviously, but they've got the outside share of representation in Madison. But when all the rest of these counties come together and all the rest of their districts and their opponents come together, they're still in the minority at this point because they want a map that does not favor and let Madison make all the decisions for everybody else. And yes, if you want to redraw the map and make your progressive utopia, then yes, you first have to win. It's the same thing that I yell and scream and screech when people talk about go back out and before they even have a mandate in Congress, they talk about, oh, we're going to go ban abortion. When they're either in the minority in Congress or they have a 1-seat majority. Like, dude, you have to be in power before you can make decisions like that. I am against banning abortion at a government level. I'm against abortion personally, myself, in my personal life, but I'm against using the government to go back and enforce my views. But for the people who are gung-ho and are against my position and want to use the government to force every woman to carry every single pregnancy to term, I remind you, you have to have power. You have to be in control before you get to make laws. Quote, Republican gerrymandering in Wisconsin comes from the fact that Republicans ran a platform that was idealized to the majority of people in the state outside of your little bitty teeny tiny pockets of power in Dane, Greene, Milwaukee, and Racine counties. And you had the power for years before that with the union vote and were able to hold strongholds in Eau Claire, La Crosse, Buffalo, Pepin, and that whole West Wisconsin River Board because of the manufacturing sector off of that. You had that stronghold forever. Once you turned your back on the union workers and you started to lose that stronghold, then you lost the ability to make the maps. Republicans, let that be a lesson to you, by the way, on what happens and how fickle the political situation is when you try to run to the farthest reaches of your party. And with that, we are done with the news. It is over. We're done. So we're going to get out of here with a couple things that I like and things that I hate. But first, the rules of acquisition, which, by the way, I realized halfway through the stream I never organized my things I hate tab. But I only had one thing on the things that I like, so it got easy. And I did go back and throw an organization into that while we were watching a video earlier, so it'll be easy. It'll be fun, and we'll be done. Alright, the rules of acquisition, for those of you who are unaware. The Ferengi rules that double as their commandments for their religion that base how they conduct commerce with each other and with other species around the galaxy. The better you follow these rules, the more social credit you take to the end of life, and you get to the Divine Treasury and get more social credit to bid on a better or worse life when you get there. With the fact that Roddenberry was an avowed communist, we do look at these rules, sometimes with a grain of salt. We look at the ones that are openly mocking capitalism, but the ones that are not, we also look at and see how we can use them in real life. And if I've seen the media that shows how they were used in canon, I also go over that. But a lot of these, especially on this list, come from the novels, which I've read very few of, and therefore I can't speak to their veracity. Where were we? I know where we were. We were on the 104th because we used the sleep one. Sleep can interfere with opportunity, but you still need your sleep, dude. This one comes from a reference book, which I have not read, but Faith Moves Mountains of Inventory. Yes, that's right. When people have faith in you, when they know or they believe that you can come through on what it is, then yes, they will continue to come and buy your product or service, if applicable. So that's a pretty easy one. We don't have to go over that one too far, especially since I don't know the reference material, but I know how that gets used in real life. Make sure that you live the life that people can have faith in your ability to keep your promises, because yes, that will move mountains of inventory. Your 104th rule of acquisition. Let's continue on with things that I hate. First one, of course. Wait, this is supposed to be on things that I like. Oh, that's why, because that's over the end. And two things that I like. Because the right tab didn't open up. Alright, we gotta talk the propaganda to start with, of course, because it's happening. It's never gonna stop happening. From the Daily Wire, Russia and Iran boost accounts masquerading as MAGA loyalists to sow division in the US, which is what the accusation was going back into the previous election as well. From Tim Pierce. I say this and I hate this, but I do want to remind everybody, you do need to go back and verify where people are standing and do form your own opinions. It just randomly, blindingly retweeting, reposting stuff that you see on Facebook, X, etc. It might not even be a real thing. It's part of the reason I don't use the repost function very often, because I know how often it is that somebody's coming in here just to try to sow out division. Russia and Iran are attempting to sow division among Trump's Make America Great Again movement by amplifying deceptive voices and opinions masquerading as MAGA loyalists, according to a new report. The report comes from around high-stakes talks the Trump admin has had with Russia on ending the war in Ukraine and Iran on ending the nuclear enrichment capability. The New Contagion Research Institute reported false flags and fake MAGA how foreign and inauthentic users use fake speech to destabilize the right from within. By the way, they do this on the left too. This is not just a right-wing thing. And if you think it's just a right-wing thing, it's because you're a partisan hack. States that Russia and Iran's coordinated playbook delegitimized every fresh headline as a false narrative, amplified Tehran's lies, and accused Trump of complicity and moral corruption. Those efforts exploited what the Institute called false flag reflex, a conditioned response that turns every major atrocity into a trigger for trending conspiracy claims. The reports listed the Uvalde, Texas shooting, the October 7th Hamas massacre of more than 1,200 people in Israel, the attempted Trump assassinations, as well as other domestic attacks. In In the days following these crises, Kremlin-affiliated propagandists and Iranian state-linked media are able to rapidly inject narratives that are taken up by MAGA imposter influencers who then inject them into MAGA-branded spaces, often within minutes of breaking news, the report asserted. Again, this is happening to your big favorite left-wing accounts too, I hate to tell you. The report asserted. During one such activation window, 650,000 posts supporting false flag conspiracies drew nearly 4 million interactions, powered by a pipeline of Kremlin-affiliated propagandists, spam bot networks, and domestic influencers such as Fuentes, Shields, and Jackson Hinkle. Verify, verify, verify. Always do your own research. Just reposting the thing doesn't mean that it's right. Just the blue check doesn't mean that it's right. And yes, I've come back and recanted some of the things that I've seen deleted because they were false. And I've seen a large number of people that I've interacted with. The posts have been deleted or the account's been deleted because it was found to be false in some way or another. Alright, a little bit here on the culture war side, which I don't necessarily use. A lot of men on dating apps out there put that reproductive rights as a cause that they value, and I'm genuinely curious. Do they put that because they think women will respond positively to it? Which, by the way, that's it. That's the reason right there. Do they care about men's rights in reproduction, which are largely neglected and unfavored? No, they don't. They just want to nail a prog chick and move on. Now, in my dating, and those days are now far behind me at this point, I was always ambiguous about I wasn't, I guess, really that ambiguous. I didn't really talk about it much in the profile, but I'm openly anti-government. I have been anti-government from the moment. I've been anti-government since I was a leftoid. At the time, that was the faction that was most likely to leave me alone to live my own life. I mean, that was in the Bush years, where they were trying to control the narrative and control what it is that you couldn't say. Or, lastly, did they actually care about it so much that they listed on their dating profile? Because that seems a little bit strange, to be honest. No, they're just trying to get in the pants of prog chicks. Because the conservative chicks are going to make them work for it harder. That's what that is. I am so glad that I'm not dating anymore. I've had this conversation with Palm before too. If I had to read one more profile that said, "I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little bit stitious," I was gonna scream. That's bad for dudes out there. Because girls think that they can just throw out no profile at all and just get millions of views and interaction. Or put insanely vague things. Thank God again, no more worry about this one. See, other things that I hate. The EV situation over and over again. People are trying to come back and say that you shouldn't be allowed to go back and do EV in Texas or whatnot, or trying to push the EV narrative in Texas. With Jesse Felton says, I don't think it's actually humanly possible to spend less time in a Buc-ee's than it takes to supercharge. I've made this drive in a gas vehicle and in a Tesla. You just plug in and go inside, no fiddling with a payment screen, no waiting for your tank to fill and reparking. Just walk inside and come back out to a full charge. It's more convenient than gas, with also the consideration that supposedly you spend a considerable amount of time in Buc-ee's, 15 minutes or so, which I've never done in a gas station. I don't know how people do that. Especially if I'm doing a long drive. I just want to be back in my truck and on the road. Listening to some sort of documentary, video commentary or otherwise. I love documentaries while I'm driving. But Elon Musk come back and reposting this and saying, yup, further inflaming the gas and ice tensions. Here's the reality. Again, you put the cars on the lot, you put the gas cars on the lot, you put the electric cars on the lot, you take all the subsidies away, the free market decides. And I want the people who want EVs to have EVs, and I want the people who want gas cars to have gas cars. I want the people to be able to decide for themselves what they want. I think EV is a wonderful technology. And I say that unironically. I don't want one. But I think it's given options, and it's given the ability to even push the gas car makers to make a more fuel efficient car. And I don't think that we gain anything by continuing to have these wars over everything. Oh, do we need a timeout over here? Hey friend, I see your channel needs an audience to watch your stream, so you can start by earning $24 per hour with Kick, which I can involve your channel to get 3,000 followers, 200 views, and many chats to associate with Kick. So contact me on Discord for more information. How about no, Scott? I'll give you, 5 minutes? 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes. Think about it for a second. If you still want to come back and try again, you're welcome to. But we'll have you 5 minutes to think about spamming and scamming things. I do want more viewers on Kick, by the way. So go tell your friends that we have that platform. Senator Murkowski in this one. We're going to listen to this one briefly because it's 5 minutes long. And I gotta pee. Breaking, Senator Murkowski said she's open to leaving the GOP and becoming independent and voting alongside Democrats if they manage to pick up 3 Senate seats. Well, don't you have to be a member of the GOP to leave the GOP? I think basically at this point it's just uniparty anyway. Let's listen to a little bit of it.
Say Democrats win 3 seats in the next midterm election in the Senate, and they say, we're going to let you pass bills that benefit Alaskans if you caucus with us. You don't have to become a Democrat. You can be an independent. Caucus. But if you caucus with us and provide the sort of 4th vote that we need to get from where we are now, and you can pass legislation that helps Alaskans, would you do it?
It's an interesting hypothetical. You've started off with the right hook here is if this would help Alaskans, because at the end of the day,
I know you.
Yeah, you do.
I've done my reading.
Yeah, see? This is why this book is kind of scary, because now people know what motivates me, and it's this love for Alaska and what I can do. So that's my primary goal. I have to figure out how I can be most effective for the people that I serve. That's why I'm going to continue to do a really hard job, because I want to try to help people. My problem with your hypothetical is that as challenged as I think we may be on the Republican side, I don't see the Democrats being much better, and they've got not only their share of problems, but quite honestly, they've got some policies that I just inherently disagree with. One of the things that I thought was interesting in the book when we're writing it was this whole effort prior to me deciding that I was going to launch the write-in. People were looking at what happened after the primary, and they said the only way that you are going to retain this seat is if you basically have your name on the ballot, and the only way to do that is to basically carry the flag of the Libertarian Party, because that was the only party outside of the Republicans and Democrats. And so they said, basically, can you be a libertarian for a day to get elected? And they dangled that in front of me, and all of the people that I was talking to said, this is, of course, what you have to do. And I said, I can't do that. I can't be somebody that I'm not. I can't now say I want.
Well, you're doing that by running as a Republican, so do keep that in mind. And I really, really hate the fact that the Libertarian Party is the catch-all for if you don't fit into either party. Because the LP, for all of their cringe, well, the small LP, I should say, for all the cringe that goes along with it, does have some very good ideals, and ideals that I kind of wish would be picked up by more of the Republican Party. The anti-war, the anti-intervention, the anti-government. The Night Watchman desire that I'd like to see for the Republican Party fits more along with the libertarian ideal than even the Libertarian Party proper, which again has just basically become a place for failed politicians of either party to go back in and try to maintain relevance. Especially when we have a Gary Johnson, a literal failed Republican, versus a Joe Jorgensen, a communist college professor. Both trying to run under the LP banner. And now people are pushing one of the most government overreachy politicians, Lisa Murkowski, to go run under that same banner. I'm glad she rejected it, honestly. Alright, Derek Evans. Gentleman here. I just applied to be an ICE agent. My plan is that any information I get on ICE raids, I'm going to report back to the Mexican community and, just try to help you guys out. I'm just here to help. That's my plan. Are you a moron? You know they're going to find this, right? I mean, if you want to make a change and do something, this wouldn't be the worst way to do it. Go back in and infiltrate. It's how the progressive movement took over the Democratic Party. But you don't go back out and tell people you're doing it.
What's up, guys? I just applied to be an ICE agent, and my plan is that any information I get on ICE raids, I'm going to report back to the Mexican community and, just try to help you guys out. Also, every time a Mexican gets deported, I'm sneaking 2 Mexicans back into the United States. I'm just here to help. That's my plan. I will update you guys along the way. Thank you. What's up, guys? I
promise you, you're not.
I just applied to be an...
Because you're not going to get in on that. I can tell you that. Another instance of everything is racist. Ben Crump. Yes, that Ben Crump. The U.S. Marine Corps is ending shaving waivers for razor bumps. Marines whose condition doesn't improve may face discharge. Ignoring medical realities that disproportionately affect black service members is institutional bias in uniform. Dude, I get razor bumps. And while I don't agree with the military on this one because, well, everybody goes through it, this isn't a race thing. Just like what I said about when everything is sacred, nothing is sacred. When everything is racist, nothing is racist. But go off. Couple more. Then we're out of here. It'll be over. And we can go and hang out with the voice of Steven. Carmelo Anthony is requesting more money again. Which is also funny because he's also requesting a public defender because he's too destitute to afford an attorney, even though he's got a almost $1.5 million give send go with $500,000 raised for it. And he's going to go to trial too, by the way, so we get to go see this. They're not going to try to go plead this one out. He has no attorney right now, apparently. He's seeking to go get the public defender. And he still wants to go back and take it to trial. Dude, I don't even know what the deal is right now, but take the deal. I think we're about to lose Instagram. In fact, I know we're about to lose Instagram. So let's go ahead and get this plugged back in. I just saw the screen go dim, which meant we hit the 5% mark. We hit the 2% mark. We saved that one just in time. I was ranting enough that it just went dim for the 2% mark and we didn't see it. This is a painfully slow charger too that I have it plugged to. So we'll go back and do it on the regular charger later, but I love that they say the funds are for the following: safe relocation for the family, basic living expenses, transportation, counseling, enhanced security, and retaining qualified legal counsel and an investigative team, even though, again, they're requesting the public defender at this point. If they're requesting the public defender, I wouldn't give these people another dime. Full stop. I wouldn't give them a dime anyway, but because I didn't think that you could campaign for violent crimes on Give, Send, Go. But apparently you can. Alright, that's all of it for things that I hate. Here's a couple things that I like to finish out the show in a more positive manner. Apparently I picked up some viewership somewhere because it just jumped up everywhere, but I don't know where. Well, I guess I could go over and look at the dashboard. Because they typically show me over there. A couple people on Twitch, a couple of people on YouTube, a couple of people on Rumble is what it's telling me. Alright, a couple things that I like. Now, typically I would not say thing I like about something like this, but I do like this one. SpaceX Starship explodes on Texas launch site. Now, the reason that I like this, of course, is that this is unmanned, and while there's debris and everything that needs to get cleaned up, I do think that Tesla is intelligent enough to go out and get everything cleaned up at this point. But, I mean, this is a learning experience for them. They're trying to figure this out and make this go. I hate these people who say that it's an automatic failure if everything doesn't go 100% right every time. Now, yes, I'd be singing a different tune if this was manned and there was somebody in there that had passed away from this, but that is not the instance right now. This was not a manned mission. It's just a scratch, he said. Nobody died. We learned what's going to be next. We're going to figure this out, figure out how to go back and recapture and everything. I am excited to see what comes out of the final product for SpaceX. I am. And I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm excited to see it. And lastly, on things that I like, a little bit of conspiracy-minded. I don't like the subject of the conspiracy, but I like the fact that people can be at least open about it. Friend of the show, Liberty Lockdown, Clint Russell. Want to hear the tinfoil hat theory I think about all the time, but never say out loud because I can't prove it. The Butler investigation wasn't reopened because Trump already knows who tried to kill him, and he works for them now and tries to keep his family alive. I know, crazy. And I do think it's nutso and schizo and everything else that goes along with that, but I like the fact that we can actually discuss these things and either try to put it to bed or have a talk about it and actually have a conversation about something. You know, we sit in a situation with censorship where something comes out and we don't even get to have the conversation. We just have to take it as gospel. And I don't think this is true. I think this is absolutely asinine. But I like the fact that people are being more open about and not afraid to have the conversation. So, good job, Liberty Lockbot. I had to get Liberty Lockbot on Head Talk, which we got to start doing rounds for that this week. So I'll reach out to him, I think. I'll see if I can. I know he's a huge account now, so maybe he doesn't want to talk to little old me, but I'd love to sit down and actually have a real interview with this guy. We'll see what I can muster up. He does follow me back. Or he did. Yeah, he still does. He follows me back, so maybe we can make this happen. Be a great conversation to have, not about the news. Just about what's going on in Clint's life. You know? The stuff that I like to hear about. Alright, let's get out of here, dude. It's over. It's done. Whew. We did a lot today. It was great. It was amazing. And we did it in under 4 hours. 3:20 is still a little bit long for a live stream, but under 4. Hello, that's awesome, especially the way that we've been going. Come on. That's great. Anyway, let's throw the outro music up. I has got to hit the can. I know this drives along nuts when I have the two musics across from each other, over each other. Anyway, thank you everybody who came by and supported this live chat and live stream and everything that we did. This will be back on the replay. If you missed any of it or you want to go back and catch up, that'd be awesome of you. Share the replay out with your friends if you see it. It will be linked in the Discord and on the X if you want to go back and hang out with that, along with the audio platform. We put this on Spotify for your convenience in case you want to do this while you're driving and you're not watching the video and save some bandwidth. Or you want to toss it in your pocket or close your screen on your phone while you're going on a jog or a hike or working. All the options are out there for you, and I want to make this the best that it can be for you. But thank you so much. Take care. We will see you here next week as we figure out if the ceasefire held, if we see if there's anything more about Belter, if we see if there's anything more about our friend over in New York. That's going to be an interesting time as well. Plus, it's been such a great couple months that I'm sure that we'll have a new set of insane crises to talk about, because that's how it's been going basically since January 21st of this year. Thank you. Take care. Have a wonderful time. We will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.